someone who I talk to, we talk about like sort of like a well, like the introvert has like a deep well, and it's just like thought, idea, the reservoir. And I think for the extrovert, the well is like it fills up and then they pour it out. Like they fills up and then they pour it out. They fills up and pour it out. They just keep
pain. I think we'll get into that too. Like we were talking about empathy before. It's like I have no problem relating with someone's pain or empathy. It's like I'm in touch with your emotions more than I'm in touch with my own. Like hip hop has definitely been therapeutic for me though in that, because even the way I'm talking right now has so much more emotion than when I was younger. I couldn't even talk like this. I couldn't even go, hey, what's going on, man? I couldn't talk like that. It wasn't in my skill set. And little by little, hip hop has definitely brought me out of that shell, being able to emote and to be able to tap into, like you said, the lion, and now I remember that. Like, so whenever I have to go give a presentation that's not about hip hop and just about me talking or whatever, now it's like, yo, remember you're a beast. Remember you're a lion. Remember.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit y'all with something that'll help. So take it to public speaking. We should do a whole episode on public speaking. So here's the thing about public speaking. I think most people who are introverts have been told like, oh, you're not good at public speaking. You're an introvert, right? You're timid. Oh yeah. I was like, no, it's just that the thing that you probably do well is seen as a crutch, right? Like if you're charismatic and you're outgoing, that's seen as like, oh, that's a good public speaker. It's like, no, that's just their gift. They're charismatic.
Right. Yo, what's going on, Bernard Hankins? How are you?
Pretty good.
I figured that since I was running up against the wall, I would do the double intro to allow for us to get situated. I started creating a room. I don't know if you did for Clubhouse.
Well, I started to as well, but we didn't have a title yet, so I hadn't hit publish yet.
What should the title? Oh, okay. Well, what should the title be?
Well, what did you have a topic you wanted to do from that list?
The wallflower thing really appealed to me as one of them, as one of the ones, and identifying both with that label and not with that label at the same time. It was really an interesting one. So something about that definitely was appealing to me as the first thing that sort of jumped into my mind. There's so much there. Really is so much there, but I think that's a decent name to and a different entry point. I'm looking back at it now again. I'm looking at the whole show some emotion piece too. That's stuck with me as well. And we talked a little bit about passive aggressive, and I think that's warranted as another deep dive too. So maybe deep dive with the wallflowers. No, I don't know.
Well, I figure, I haven't come up with the best name yet, but I just thought about, like, as this podcast goes along, there'll be different episodes that could be series. So, like, this one would be called, like, Redefine, and then, like, Wallflower, or Unemotional. So right now, I'll put Redefine, Wallflower.
All right. I'll go with that over here, too. Let's see. Redefine.
And I'm putting a capital D.
Capital D.
Because we're deaf,
Redefine Wallflower. Bang. Or redefining.
Well, I'm going to redefine colon.
All right.
It's almost like the series is called Redefine, and then this particular one is Wallflower.
Let's go with that. Redefine. Yeah, redefine is definitely a big theme. There we go. I got it up there. On this end, I do have to abandon my one over here. We're live, by the way, so we're not that anyone knew we were going live, but they're gonna find out. Well, 2 people know, because 2 people are checking us out right now. What's up, people? We're just getting situated. We're doing the perfect day for the Introverse, which is Sunday. And to me, there's, if you asked me, if you polled me, if you said, what day of the week is an Introvert's perfect day? Sunday's right up there. Sunday is definitely up there. Sunday afternoon, mid-evening. That's really some zone out time. So
All right.
we hope that other introverts are sitting around and are like, you know what, we gotta hear what they talking about. All right, you put it up on Clubhouse. I see.
Yep.
Oh no,
I started the room. The room is. Why does it say replays off? What? Just puts the replays was naturally on. All right, cancel this room.
while you getting that set, I'm gonna tell you a funny. Well, I think it's a funny story. I stayed at the hotel last night with my wife and my son. We checked out her cousin's state championship basketball game. I was mentioning briefly the other day, and it was at VCU. You ever been out there?
I've been up there. I can't remember if I actually been on the campus.
Yeah, it was the same for me. I'd been out that way before, and I actually, when I was interviewing for to figure out what job I would take, I interviewed out that way, and not for them. It was a different college that was out that way, and they took me on the little tour out there, and they were showing me it's the other town next to it, next to Richmond, Petersburg, and they were like, Petersburg's on the come up, and I was like, how long does it take to get to DC? They were like, oh, it's not a bad drive at all. And I was like, well, what would you say? You know, like on, you know, if I left at like 5 o'clock, let's say, they're like, ooh, I could take like 4 hours. I was like, what? They're like, well, it's like a 2 hour drive at the most. But with
Right.
the traffic out here, when you have to start heading up, especially when you get up by 395 and trying to get, you know, that's where we are. We're right off that in Alexandria. I was like, nah, I can't do that. So this was the first time I've been down really since that. We saw the state championship basketball game. Our cousin's team lost, but we got to see my son is an only child, and so we got to see all his relatives. He was dying to see like cousins, relatives, because with COVID, you know, we really haven't been anywhere.
Right.
He was hugging them like it was no tomorrow. He's like, my family was so cute. It was so we were glad we did it, even though we snuck it in. I'm talking wire to wire. I did a PD event yesterday, and as soon as I was finished, my wife was downstairs with the car running. So she was like, grab your bag, because the timing just to make the game. You know, I left, I think I probably walked out of the house at 3:25, and I got out of my other thing at like 3:15. And we got down there, got to the hotel, checked in. As soon as we checked in and put our bags up, we got back in the car. It was a grand total of probably 20 minutes in the hotel. By the time we checked in and everything, we tried to do the little, you know, digital check-in or whatever. We get there, and we just missed, by the time we parked and did everything, we just missed the start, and they were up by like 6 points at the very beginning of the game. We're like, oh, this is going to be great. And it didn't work out. This did not work out. And it was quite the optical. It was quite the optic. It was which I don't know the area that well. Like, I'm not really that familiar with how things break down this way. The entire crowd was there for his team. And their team, I'm thinking middle of the woods, Virginia. It's gonna be like mostly white people. Team was all black. His team's all black. The whole crowd's all black. And there were like 30 white people sitting in the back, right? And the whole other team was white. And I was like, wow, this is a pillar of diversity, this school. All the cheerleaders are white, and they were in the back, like against the wall. So clearly they took like a bus because they weren't from around there, and this school was pretty close. And her cousin's team, who we were going to see, they were like upset some teams to actually get there. And I'm like, who is this team that they're playing? Like they got like 20 fans. They can't be good, you know. But I guess it was they took the bus in, but they were nice. So that was unfortunate. But then, you know, I'm looking at the area and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out this place down here, and I kind of liked it because it reminded me of where I'm from. It reminded me of Lowell. It looked a lot like Lowell, that part of Richmond or whatever. And my son, you know, first time he'd been out there, so he's counting graffiti. He's like, he's all into graffiti now. So he's like, Daddy, is there graffiti? Because he's at that age where he doesn't understand if it's art or if it's vandalism, you know. So he has a lot of questions about that. So, but it was just good getting. It was the first real thing we've actually done since COVID. You know, like really been like did something in public kind of thing. And then on the backside, we had to run back for me because I had a basketball game. My first game was at 10 a.m. So we got out of there. We ate breakfast. We got out of there. I got home. And, I had maybe an extra 15 minutes. I got there in time, and we did not win. So that was funny. And it just committed me. I was picking. She was like, "Can you pick up lunch for us on the way back?" Because they weren't feeling like making anything or whatever. Man, I got salad. I was like, after the showing, I was like, it's time for the salad to come on in, man. So I gotta flip the switch and try to get into shape. And that's kind of one of the topics that was on there too, indirectly when on the post up topics. But how's your typically for me sleepy Sunday? How's your Sunday going?
It's pretty good. I considered going to church.
Didn't make
I
it.
don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to connect. I'm like, maybe I just need to talk to a single person. But just the idea of going into like a building,
Mm-hmm.
I actually, because I started going to this Chinese church for a couple of weeks because it was a much
You
smaller
said that.
crowd. But even then, I was just like, I don't know. I just can't talk to people.
How about online?
I mean, I guess part of me is like, since I'm back to school doing in person now, I'm at least more comfortable being in person in other places. So I would prefer to be in person with that, even though during the pandemic, I was like, great, yeah, church online, let's do that.
I mean, we did it before the pandemic. We were doing my wife's father's church. They do. I mean, they're like state of the art. I mean, it's crazy. This was this like little Baptist church in Stafford, and it was like this little kind of church, and now it's like grown and grown and grown. It's like on and popping there. It's like a television production. They have going there, and they had that up and running online real early. Like, I mean, I want to say like 2.5 years before COVID. So we poked in there a few times, but it's different. It depends what you're looking for, But
yeah, most of the churches are the same though. It's just that's the main reason. It's like I know I'm gonna go, and it's gonna be like it's just all the same kind of format.
Yeah, it is the same format. I've been to quite a lot, and it's I went up to a non-denominational church in Boston, and the non-denominational church is down here are almost exactly the same. And this Baptist one, actually, to me, it's a mostly very, I don't know, I'd say new wave Baptist church, and it's it's very different than when she was a kid and went there, and
Right.
and it's weird, because it's just like everyone knows everybody in that town, but it's been pulling and drawing other people. So I'm not a big Stafford guy. I got nothing wrong with Stafford, but it's just like it's just not my speed, So it's
Right.
and they live right next. Her dad lives like right next to it, so they have no excuse. They just like walk on over. They're like, they share land with the church. I mean, that's how close they are. It's that kind of close, but it's a whole new world down here. So I'm looking at these topics here, and I got to ask you a couple of them because you took the lead on these. I have to jump into the room. So you got the room up, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't know if we had officially started, if we're gonna roll the intro and.
Yeah, let's roll it. But the problem is when we roll it in that room, no one can hear it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
We'll have to get to that eventually, but I mean, it's
we
only
have to figure
episode
that
number
out.
2.
I think if we bring a speaker and play it on another thing and hook it up. How come I'm not seeing the room?
I don't know. I can ping you
Wave
in
or something. Yeah, you're not showing up. Is it on my? Oh, okay.
All right, I just pinged you.
Maybe it's me. Oh, okay. There it is. Yes. 1 2 1 2. Let me raise my hand and see if you guys can hear me when I come up. 1 2 1 2. Yeah, looks like we're good. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Yes. Cool. And I will add some people in a second. Let's run that intro since there's no one in the room anyways. We're gonna run the intro and we're gonna get right on into the real deal here. So let's go. Boom, bam. And there it is. There it is, people. You checking out Introverse? And we're going to jump on into it. I think I got my sound. My sound is too loud. Let me see. Can you say something one more time?
Check,
Okay.
check. Yeah, I think I'm hearing the feedback. I mean, I got my volume turned all the way down on my phone, so I don't think
it's me. It's me.
Yeah.
Try. Are you hearing it now?
Check. Nope. Clubhouse.
Cool.
Trying to fix the audio.
1 2 1 2 1 2 in the club. 1 2 in the club. 1 2. Sounds pretty good now, I think, right?
Play it again. Let me say it again.
Yeah. I didn't hear anything. Oops. Now I hear it.
That's me. I was just making sure I could hear you. All right.
1 2.
I think we can both be heard.
Yes. So you were putting together this list here we're going back and forth on, and I got to ask you for a little bit more on some of these.
Right.
Some of them are real obvious. You want to go through some of them one at a time, but I definitely want to I want to get to the wallflower, without a doubt. And flipping the switch. I wasn't sure about that one. What's going on with that?
Well, that's a term I came up with when I did this public speaking workshop.
Okay.
And I was saying how when I'm on stage, there's just a switch that gets flipped on for the introvert, extrovert, social introvert, creative extrovert. Because so here's the story. My friend Ebony, she's in Richmond actually.
Mm-hmm.
She started this open mic 2009. She ran it for about a year, I think maybe 2. But then she was leaving to go take this trip on the world that she always wanted to do. She just traveled the world. And so when she was leaving, she's like, I need a host for the open mic. And she was like, my friend suggested you, Bernard. And I was like, why? And she was like, well, because they say you're such a good, well, not she said me, she knows me, but so because you're such a good performer. And I was like, yeah, that's 2 different things. I was like, this side of the mic, performer. This side of the mic, host. It's just two different modes.
Yeah. I've managed to get to almost the same place as a host that I do when I'm performing. And to the point where I actually think that I'm sometimes a better host than I am performer. And I'll tell you why. And this is partly a question too. So I'll pose the question at the end. When I host a show, I feel less pressure and I'm more in the moment. When I'm doing a show, I'm thinking about all the things that I have to do. And so I will write down my set lists and keep it visual, even though I usually have it memorized of what I'm going to do. But I've got to the point in the last few years, especially before COVID, where everything's on the fly, meaning like these are the 20 songs I might do. This is the one I think I'm going to do, but I'm always shifting it up. Whether it's through, I have a watch where I can just change up the order if I get to do it that way, or if I have a DJ. Sometimes I bring my man out from Invasion as my sort of hype man / DJ, and we'll just read the crowd and say, oh yeah, well, let's shift this on. But still thinking of all the moving parts when you're performing, like when am I going to kick a freestyle? When am I going to talk to the crowd? When am I going to, especially if you're performing for about 20 minutes, which typically tends to be what's happening. And if I'm doing a speaking performance, like performative workshops or performative PD, which is what I do most of now, there's so much more that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about all these salient points I have to make, and I want it to be free flowing. And I say it at the beginning, I want this to be a conversation, but then I start worrying about how engaged the crowd is. Maybe I need to go to more of my engagement stuff. Even yesterday, yesterday I was doing the workshop that took place out in LA. A great group of people. It was wonderful. But the thing that was tough for me was it was a Zoom and nobody had terminals. I was just on a big screen TV in their room. So the other 4 presenters, part of our team, and shout out to Dr. V, putting that together. It's an amazing team of people who do their thing, and they were all live. And so I'm feeling the pressure of like, I got to be extra engaging because I'm not there. I got to really make sure to reach out into the crowd. And I can't do the things that I would do on Zoom normally, which is different, like little app things that I'm using to get sort of feedback and so forth. I'm talking, we get interaction. and from teaching online quite a bit, I'm pretty decent with that. But when everybody only has one terminal and it's a little difficult to hear and it's a little difficult to see, especially when you got, like, I had slides up and everything, I'm thinking about so much that I'm actually out of my element. But if
Right.
I'm just hosting, I feel free. I just read the vibe better. So I guess posing this as a question to you is that when you are on the stage as a performer and you use this word flip the switch, do you tangibly feel that there's a flip that occurs after you're on the stage, or is it as like before you get up there because you're in performance mode?
Okay. I'm gonna try to answer by telling this other story. I have to think about
All
it a
right.
little bit. So I got invited to this party once.
What up, Trey, by the way?
Um, I basically got this poetry grant, and the whole idea was to do performances around the town. So there's one woman who helped participate. She said, "Oh, you could do one at my house at this party I'm having. It's like masquerade party or something." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I got up. First and foremost, I knew I didn't. I guess I didn't realize how uh the feeling of how in position was going to be, because she let the party go for a little bit, and then she's like, "Hey, we have this guy we wanted to perform." So I had this like 8-minute poem and then like this 4-minute poem, and you could just feel in the audience people are like, "Oh, we're here to drink and dance, and why are you telling us about our life and meaning?" um so then uh but the interesting thing is, like, after it was done, I got off the stage and everybody was like, "Oh, that was so great. Oh, that was so interesting, blah, blah, blah." So I was like, "Oh, like, this is my icebreaker. Like, my performance is always my social icebreaker." I was like, if I could just perform at every party, then when I step off, it's okay. Now you have seen me. Now you know me. Now let me talk to you. So the switch that you're asking about, I think there is a tangible feeling of like I'm in my element or self, so much so that when I do it, I get off stage, I'm like more socially comfortable. Um, yeah, I think you got muted on Restream.
I did. Sorry.
Oh,
So you mean after you get off the stage, you're able to interact more than you normally would because you performed?
yeah, it's like now you have seen me. Like
Mm,
that thing was the icebreaker. That thing was the way to introduce
you.
myself to the
Yeah, I know
world.
you. Yeah, I got you.
And now
Yeah.
the conversation becomes like instant. All right, let's talk about whatever.
Yep.
Let's just go to it instead of, "Oh, hey, how are you? Where are you from? Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice." Blah blah
Because now
blah.
they're
It's like,
getting
oh,
into your actual art and the concepts raised. Yeah, I got you. That's dope. That's dope. I actually don't feel that 100%. When I get off, I'm still in a weird mode. I do feel that sometimes. Like I come, especially if it's a really good performance and you can see that the people were actually engaged in the lyrics. For me, I also care so much about the lyrics. I know you do too. And I care about what the topics are. And if I feel like people weren't paying attention, then I'm like, let me just get out of here. Like I feel that and I want to walk out, but I don't, because I don't want to be that
right,
person. I feel like chewing and screwing. Like I don't want to be that person who isn't watching some of the other performers if there's anyone after me. The problem is when you do these performative workshops or you're showing up at a college, most of the time, not always, most of the time, I'm either last or the only person. And
right,
at those kind of events, it's different. Like I feel like I can kind of bounce after I've just talked to the people and I'm in a better mood about it. But if I'm sitting there and I'm going to end up watching like 3 to 4 people who I don't know who they are, then I'm like, let me go find my spot. I go right into the mode. I go, let me go find my spot that's out of the way. Let me maybe get some food so that I actually use food as a shield. Like I'll be like, oh, let me get food and a drink or something and go somewhere. And if I'm with a little people or crew, then I'm way more, it's funny, I'm way more social if I'm actually with, I was talking about that a little bit the other day. I have my little bubble around me because I'm with them, the people that I know. And then, but by myself, it's weird. Even today, like playing. This is a different topic, but playing basketball. I could feel it in me, like everybody was like huddling together, and they were over before the game. I don't know who's on my team. It was all free agents, right? And I was just sitting there for the longest time, and it was like 2 minutes before the game was going to start. It wasn't that long. It was like 15 minutes total. But it's kind of awkward because all the people are sitting around and they're kind of talking with the team. And in my head, I'm going, how do they know what team they're on? And then I'm going, do these people all know each other? And what I liked about it was a free agent team, so nobody knew each other. And so it wasn't like I was interjecting myself into the thing. I just want to play basketball and get in shape. You know,
Right.
I'm not there for the, well, clearly I'm not there for the social hour part of it. And they were cool. Really, they were really cool afterwards. You know, it's something about being in a team or whatever that afterwards it is pretty cool. You know, we're talking about the game and talking about what we need to do. And I was talking about, man, I need to stop eating some Cheez-Its and get myself in a better game shape. But when you get off the stage like that, you're just able then to just chill with everybody there because you performed. I mean, like, what's coming loose is kind of the question. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's to your point of, I think especially if you're an artist, a creative person, you really identify with your work and your creativity as who you are. Like some people is like, oh, that's not who you are. That's just what you do. It's like, no, like this is who I am. Like if you want to know me, ask about what I make and what I create.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest problems that you run into if you're talking to someone who is a creative at heart, at their core, and doesn't necessarily mean they're introvert, but just people who identify with art. They see, as I tell people, art or creativity is not what I do; it's what I am. I am music. I am art. I am creativity. Whereas I think other people who participate, they see it as something they do. Like, oh, that was fun to do for. Like I told the story last on Friday. Like I wrote a rap the first time, and my friend was like, "Oh, that was just a one-time thing." But I was like, "No, this is me now. Like we will now do this."
Yep.
It's integrated into who I am. So I think,
and you were like, "You can stop. I'm doing this."
So if you really identify with the work that you create, that's personal to you. And so when someone asks about it or they see it, you feel like you've been seen.
Yeah. Right.
And so now when it comes time to step off the stage, it's like, okay, I don't have to explain myself. I just explained myself through the craft. Like, cause that's another thing. Like when I perform poetry, I don't explain my poems. And like, if I don't do a good job writing the poem, then that's like that. If I can't just do the poem as is, then I didn't do a good job of writing a poem. I don't start off with all this like, so guys, I wrote this in 2009 when I was thinking about what does mean is like why are you doing this preamble? Do the poem. The poem should deliver itself. You should be like, oh, I got it. Like when you watch my God's hard drive video when I die, you should be like, oh, that's that guy. Like literally have my tombstone with like a digital display. Oh, that's him. Okay, cool. We got him now. So I think there's something about. I think we're gonna do a whole topic on this one that creative introverts, when it comes to like family and just like why can't parents really understand them? It's because like they don't know how to connect. You know, they're like, why do you do this stuff? Like this is not stuff. Like this is me.
Yep.
So when you're trying to talk to your child who is an introvert creative person and you just see it as this other thing and you don't know how to relate, is because you're thinking that's not important enough to engage them through, where they're thinking this is the only way to engage me. We will watch someone open up. Like if you, instead of sending them a text and it's like, hey, how are you? If you say like, yo, how's your writing going? Boom, you'll get a text back instantly.
Sure.
Immediately.
Yeah, right. Makes a lot of sense. I think my son just hit us up. It says hi, and it's from my account. And the only person who would access to my account would be my son. So hi, son. Hi, Henry. How are you? If he's still watching, he was probably just looking to get on YouTube, and since it's broadcasting through my page, he was probably like, "Yo, this is cool." He said the other day he couldn't respond, and it was like, "Well, that's because you were trying to respond as me on my show." But I don't know what medium he was going through. But anyways, the need to explain oneself before the show, I love to be able to not, but a lot of times I feel like I have to. I feel like I've interjected into the middle of somebody's party sometimes. Many times, depending on how I'm introduced, when the introduction is poor, I feel like I have to reset the parameters of what happened. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, hey, what up, Audra? I feel like I have to come in and say, like, if they said it wrong, like, oh, he's a professor who raps and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like,
right.
I almost wish I didn't hear that. I get it if I'm coming to your college or whatever like that. You know, I get it, like, because it's education is more of interest. But if I'm just at a place performing, you know, I don't need that kind of introduction. Just let me be a person who's, you know, performing, you know, and you know, next is pro, you know, like, hey, that's cool.
Right.
You know, we got Professor Lyrical from Boston or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, cool. I appreciate it. You know, here, I'm going to do this piece. Check it out. Hope you like it.
Right.
Boom. But when it's not like that, or if it's a special interest event and I flip the script and do something different, then I might give a little warning. You know, I'll be like, yeah, this one right here is about my son. Wrote it when he's 2, he's 8 now. Still pertains. Boom, here it is. You know, and get into it. And I like that too. I appreciate it too when I get like just a 5-second overview synopsis about what I'm about to hear. You know, because if someone's like, yeah, this one's about, you know, when I was going through that rough time and I was dealing with suicide, whatever, and I'm just like, all right, I might not need to hear that one. You know what I'm saying? Quite honestly. Saying, like, but if you're gonna be talking about something that's in my wheelhouse, you know, not to anything against that. It's just like sometimes I don't want to hear that, you know. You know, in these days, more and more you go to a college, I mean, they'll pull you over. Like college will tell you, they'll say, hey, just give a trigger warning if you're going to say something that's triggering, like suicide, race, whatever it's going to be. So it's funny because most of my stuff is trigger warning kind of stuff. So it's like, well, that's
you should change your name to trigger warning.
Right. Here comes the trigger. Yeah, like, here it comes.
Coming to the stage, trigger warning.
Yeah, it's not bad. There was somebody who I did a show with somebody, their name was it was also performing. And I was like, what? They were like, also performing is also performing. They're like, no, it's just how we were on every flyer all the time. It just said also performing. And I was like, wow, that was dope.
Well, I get on Spotify every day and I use the
Special
web player. And so I typed in Spotify web player and it took me to Spotify, but it took me to an artist, and the artist actually named himself Web Player. Because I guess they knew the SEO people were searching for Spotify web player, so they were like, all right, might as well call myself Web Player and get more views.
Yep, that's smart.
But to your point about the being introduced, well, okay, so I used to be on this art board, and I remember they said everybody submit a bio, and I hate being normal, especially I'm on an art board.
You have a tough time with that.
So I had this bio that I came up that I really liked because I had thought about it before. I was like, oh man, what do I use? I use my eyes to make film. I use my ears to make music. Like I use my hands to write. So I literally, the thing I said, subject scan, eyes, film, ears, music, hands, beats, in transmission. Like that was my bio. Like it was short, it was fun, it was different, and I submitted it. So we get to this event, and I guess whoever read it was like, I'm not reading this. So then I was sitting there in the audience and they were like, next up we have Bernard Hankins works. It was like the most boring, generic. Number one, I didn't say any of the stuff that was being read. So I'm like, why are you reading it? If you didn't like it, you could just let me know and be like, hey, could you just do something like for the traditional person? I'm like, fine, I'll do it. But it's like people, they're not ready for something that's not normal, so to speak, which again, I was like, if you're coming to see art, like you should be prepared for stuff that's not normal. There's a whole reason for coming. I'm coming to speak in rhythm and rhyme. That's not normal. I'm coming to put oil on a canvas. That's not normal. I'm coming to move in front of you. That's not normal. So the whole being introduced thing, I guess that could be a whole nother topic we do, just being introduced. Because you, especially when you know yourself very well, when someone introduces you as they see you, that's very frustrating because you're like, I'm not being seen as I'm putting myself out into the world.
If you're doing a panel, I feel that it's mandatory. If it's not listed or whatever, because the first thing I'm saying is, who is this person and what are they going to tell me? I am thinking, I do want to know, like, it is kind of a credential thing. I'm like, I just want to know that this person knows what they're talking about. Because a lot of times you see a panel, there might be 5 people on a panel and one of them is tangential, you know, and a lot of times it's me. There'll be a panel and I'm the tangential person. They're putting me in there for entertainment value, you know, and that's what, even though I can speak to the topic, they're telling me ahead of time. They're saying, yo, we're gonna be talking about, you know, STEM education, but we really want you to bring up the arts, you know, and it's like, I'm perfectly qualified to speak on STEM education, but it's like, I'm getting my role, you know, so I find that you see that a lot of times. There's a panel, they want some differing view, or they want some whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I would like to know like where this person's coming from and who they are. And even sometimes the institution that they're at can tell you something about maybe where they're going to, excuse me. It's not mandatory, but
Right.
at least get it in those situations, and I'm totally cool with it. I'm like, okay, I figure you're gonna give it the thing. Otherwise, then I feel like it does require me to kind of throw some light on this. Like, who is this dude who's coming as a rapper? Okay, yeah, I always have to do that song and dance,
Right.
yeah. But I even
Well,
get in Clubhouse and people will do, yo, do your thing, and I'm like, I don't really feel like doing the thing. And now I have it down to like maybe like 15 seconds. Like, hi, I'm an
right.
associate professor of mathematics at the University of District of Columbia. It's an HBCU. I formerly taught at Northeastern in Boston. It's where I'm from. I've been a rapper pretty much my whole life, and I put both of them together, and that's what I do. Like
Right.
that's kind of it. Okay, that's interesting. Like let's
Right.
let's see what this dude's about. I get that that's a little out the box. It's the same for you. I mean, it's like this dude's coming. He's an educator. He does music. He's also a poet, and he's a rapper, and he does TED Talks, and he speaks, and blah blah blah. It's like you do kind of. I get it. It's more out the box than your typical maybe performer. However, I would say this: both you and I, to me, are not that different because I know so many people that are in the realm of what it is that we do. I know a lot. And they're not necessarily rappers, but there's a lot of artists who are educators. There's a ton of educator artists, and people will always say, "Oh, that's so crazy that you do that." And I'm like, "Yo, there's a legion of us out there who are, you
Right.
know." And people talk about educators as being extroverts. I don't see it. I don't. People talk
Right.
about all the educated. I'm like, no. Most of the educators I work with, the vast majority are introverts. I can see it a mile away. They want to be left alone, especially the higher ed level. They were researchers. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There's a certain quality we talked about this a little bit before, that it requires you to be a researcher. You need to be someone who doesn't come up for air for hours on time. You may not have started out a heavy introvert, but you're going to find an appreciation for it, just like a lot of
Right.
people have during COVID. You know. Um,
Well, I think it seems like what we're talking about is the negotiating your introvert self to the public
yeah.
expression of the introvert self. Um, I mean, you can make that parallel with art too. It's like, oh, you have these ideas that you have, and then how to also, communicate them the way I see them to the public so that they're seen as I'd like them to be seen. So it's the same thing with your person.
Yeah.
Like, I am this person. That's why when I start, I'm like, I'm Bernard, I'm philosopher, musician. That's how I
That's
see
what I do.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if other people don't see that, or they think, oh, well, that's not a credential, it's like I can't really control that. I mean, I guess I can if I wanted to be a fake person, but I'm not really interested in telling you what I think you want to hear. Now, sometimes I do use this strategically, like on my website. It's like, oh, I have this degree. It's like, oh, that's beefy. Like, oh, that's something to cling on to. I do have the elevator pitch to describe, yes, I'm Bernard Hankins. I do music production. I'm philosophy of music. I also teach students identity, blah, 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 blah. I guess for me, I try to not do the stuff that I hate. Like, I hate going to conferences and it's like 7 speakers just to get to the first speaker. And then we're gonna have some remarks by our chair. Like, dog, I don't really care about your remarks. Like, I come here to hear the speaker talk
Remarks are
about
tough in general. Yeah,
the
remarks are tough.
content. I mean, it's like in church too. Is you bring up the pastor, associate pastor. He got a comment
Right.
on him, and
Everybody needs a
it's
word.
like, dog, get to the point.
Yeah.
Like, get to the information of this expert who's on stage. I don't really care who sponsored it. I don't really care who did the catering. That's why we started this podcast. It's like, so let's go. I literally my whole life. Okay, this podcast, social moments, conferences. I want all of them to be like, hey, what's up? So what we're going to be talking about today is introvert. I literally want people to come up to me with just cutting to the chase. Just get to the point of the conversation.
The wallflower comment that we were talking about earlier, I wanted to jump into that if you don't mind, pivot into that. So you wrote that first. I know
Right.
that's loaded for me. Like, that means a lot of things to me. What did you have in mind, just straight out, when you wrote the wallflower term?
I mean, I guess that's a term I didn't hear. I don't think anyone called me that, but that's just a term I would hear on TV shows or just in general culture of like someone goes to a high school dance and they're considered the person who blends in with the wallpaper,
Right.
Wallflower. So if you're at a dance, you don't ever leave the side of the wall to actually go to the dance floor and ask someone to dance or talk or socialize.
So for me, I definitely identify with wallflower. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I went to one dance. They started them in middle school. They had the 7th and 8th grade dance. And I'll tell you what, I wanted to go. Like I used to think, first of all, I don't feel like I knew most of the people in the middle school that I went to. I just didn't really know all of them that many. There were a lot of schools that fed into that, and it was on the borderline of Lowell and Chelmsford. I went to Chelmsford High. I went to Lowell schools earlier, so it's not like I knew everybody in the first place. But I had enough time to know people. So in my head, but I didn't have any like cliques of people that I was really in. I rapped, and at that time, I pretty much didn't rap publicly. Like I rapped in my room. I rapped. I did a little bit of breakdancing. At least I think I did, and thought I was okay, which I wasn't. Fee and I, we won a few dance contests around, like when we were like 14 or something. I don't know how, and just poor entries that night or whatever. But so I was involved with the music, and I knew I was a rapper, but I didn't want to necessarily come out on Front Street and tell everybody that I was a rapper yet. Much like my own path into education. So when I actually did go to the first dance, I did nothing but literally had one foot up on the wall the whole time. And here's where I think it's rooted in for me. I definitely was socially awkward. I still am. I'm way less socially awkward through hip hop, through speaking, through performing, through teaching. I can hide it really well. It's almost, I know when I have my foot up on the wall now, I'm thinking wallflower. And so I put in the list too, I put peer pressure. I feel peer pressured out of being who I truly am because I'm thinking like there's something wrong with me. And
Right.
so that's an interesting thing. It gets into sort of the psychology of it. It's like, but I know why. And it's funny, I was, in the presentation I was doing yesterday, I mean, I could throw part of it up, but people we may lose more people than we need to. But in there, I was talking about sort of the 5 C's of positive youth development. And some of those C's include confidence and competence of what you're trying to build, right? And so the confidence and competence I didn't have. Like the thing I knew that I wanted to do the best in the world was to become an MC. And I wasn't the best. I wasn't even close. I wasn't even in the world. In my head, I could go, wow, you got some really dope ideas. But I didn't have a mentor. There was no rapping mentors for me. Nobody, right? At that age. So in my head, I'm going, I don't even know what's a line that people have said before outside of the stuff that I've managed to hear on record or tape or radio. It's not like I had a bunch of MC friends. I had a few, but that was it. And outside of my little tiny narrow world, I was writing rhymes. One of my first rhymes was, it was like, I'm known worldwide and I'm more than terrific. The Egyptians out in Egypt put me on their hieroglyphics and I'm more than terrific and I'm known worldwide. If my raps had an engine, they would take you for a ride. It was like this. To me, it sounded a little bit better than what most people around my way were saying. And every now and then I'd have a dope punchline, but I knew it wasn't that great, So I didn't have the competence and I didn't have the confidence because I knew that I didn't have the full competence that I needed to have about the thing that I wanted to do more than anything in the world. So to me, and I still feel this way it's like, we were talking about this before, if you're unprepared, as an MC, we go into an event, we got like 100 rhymes on deck, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But then I had like 4, so I was like only thinking about hip hop since a very young age, thinking about how dope I wanted to be and how dope I wasn't, and everything else suffered because of it. The way I interacted with people, so I had nothing to offer. So I'm like, why would anyone come talk to me? So I'm never going to ask a girl to dance. No way. My first girlfriend came and ripped me off the wall at a club, at an under 18 age club. And by that time I was definitely going to club. I was rapping and doing all this stuff. I was, sneaking in most 21 plus clubs at that time. And I actually snuck into this club, even though it was under 21 club, and just because I didn't want to pay. And so we got into this club, and this girl, she came and pulled me off the wall, and she was like, "You're dancing with me." And she was like kissing me, and like I said, and for me, like if that didn't happen, she never would have become my girlfriend because I was not about that. There was no way that I would become anyone's boyfriend at that time, unless they physically pried me off the wall. And that's actually what happened. She stayed my girlfriend for years. And I was like, "Oh, I'm good. I got a girlfriend. I'm cool." Like I don't want to go look. I don't want to go. You know what I mean? And we didn't really have that much in common. But what we had in common, well, it wasn't even what was common. It just worked for me. So in my head, I still think today I'm a wallflower. I mean, the fact that I'm married is remarkable. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's remarkable, because I'm still pretty much the same person when it comes to that. And quite even honestly, with my wife, I knew my wife for 5 years before I dated her. I mean, we were in different relationships and stuff like that, but I'm just not like a hey, what do you do? Like? I would have been much better in the world we're in now when I was younger. You know what I'm saying? I would have been much better off in sort of the social media landscape, which I still sort of was in, for part of it. But now it's like I look at people who date or whatever. You can't tell if someone's a wallflower like me. People
Right.
putting on their best cocktail hour look. They're putting on their
Right.
best, and everyone looks like an extrovert, I think, on sort of the social media side, I mean, on the dating sites and stuff. But
Right.
like to me, I'm still that person, and it's like so when I hear that that wallflower kind of thing, I'm like, oh, that's me. I hope there's no stigma about it that I don't know. I hope there's no psychological problem with that.
Right.
I'm like, y'all talking about me now.
Well, that's why I say undefine, redefine these terms. So okay, so you were talking about high school or dances
Yeah,
and clubs. When I was in 6th grade, I remember I think this was the first school dance I went to, and I was looking very forward to going to it.
6th grade. Oh, cool. Oh, cool. Were you in a 6th, 7th, 8th, or were you in a K through 6?
I think it was 6th, 7th, 8th.
Oh, that's why then you got it over, because mine was K6 and there was no
Okay.
dance until 7, 8.
So we had a dance. I couldn't even dance that well, but I hung out with my friend. But I remember I was looking forward. I wanted to go to it. And I think it was mainly because it was like, oh, I don't know, it's a dance, but also music.
Right.
And then I think about 7th grade, I think we had a dance. It was a similar thing. Like I remember the Brat came out with Functified.
Wow.
And at that time, like when the DJ put it on, like I knew all the words. And so I was like,
Yep.
yeah. So I think what I relate this to is like, I think introverted people, we do things only with purpose. Like the people say wallflower, I say no, like observer and purpose person.
I feel like I definitely was observing. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
So you're on the wall here. Okay, so here's the image that I use to describe parties, but also you can think about it in the bigger picture of life. Introverts are on the wall because we're observing life from afar. It's like you can't observe the big picture from close. It's just like a camera. Like if you zoom in with a camera lens, you're gonna get detail. But when you zoom out, it's like, oh, I see how all the dots are connected. Like you're watching this person, like, oh, he's fighting with his girlfriend. Oh, he about to trip over that chair. Oh, yep. See,
Well,
like,
that feels good to hear you say that. It feels good to me, but I have to admit, I'm observing it because I did not have the confidence and I did not have the
right,
competence in the things I cared about. So I had to observe because I felt like I was prey at these,
right,
and I still do. I go to events and whatever, and I'm like, I am 100% observing everything because it's like there's a timidness. I'm
right,
not a timid person in terms of like if I'm confident of something, the confidence takes over. It's kind of
right,
like that's why I was interested in the Twitch thing too, because it's like my confidence allows me to go on a stage and rap because I know I'm good at it. But I
right.
only do
Well,
like 3 things well, and those are the things that I'm really confident in doing. Otherwise, no, I'm not volunteering to do a lot of the
but
stuff.
okay, but so here's the thing. I think, yeah, I mean, everybody's gift is also their curse. So, like, if you're an observer on the wall, your tendency to go to the negative end of the spectrum is to like never enter the dance or the dance of life, right?
Yeah.
But I also see it from the other point of view. It's like, okay, so I'm at a party, I'm watching people. Oh, this person's drinking. Oh, he's getting slapped by his
Yeah,
girlfriend.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
this
I'm
person,
watching all
he's
that
about to
too.
trip. Like I say, the extrovert strength is that they are in the moment. They're present. They're in the thick of it. But they also don't pay attention, right? Like they're not paying attention to the fact that somebody's behind them and they're about to trip over them and
Yeah,
spill
right.
punch on them.
I feel that's very true. Yeah.
And the introvert's like, dog, like just stop and pause and look, you're about to bump into this person. I mean, you could take it to the next level. It's like that person that you're going to date now, you guys about to have trouble. Like I can see the patterns of life. So I think like we've talked about this before, how we just see stuff happen and we're like, yeah, I don't need to go experience that.
Right. I don't need
So
it. I'm good from here.
I think, yeah, the introvert's tendency is to stay out of things, but it also has its benefits. Like I've not gotten in trouble for most of my life.
I've always thought of it as a smart thing myself. Like, yeah, I'm not the trouble doesn't find me very
But
easily.
like you say, it can be a problem when you're like, oh man, I would like to talk to this girl, or oh, I need to go introduce myself to this person who has a connection, and you're like, okay, muster up the strength.
Yes.
But here's where the purpose part comes in. Because so middle school dances, and then so there was a sort of purpose. Like I'm going because there is music, maybe. I mean, not 100% true. But okay, I'll give you another example. I used to go to a lot of shows to see my favorite bands. And I would always realize, like, I always had a lot of stuff. And I said, okay, I got my CDs, I got the paper. I'm gonna get them. Like, I always had like a plan. Like, I'm gonna be here, and then after the thing, I'm gonna go to the door. I'm gonna wait for him. He's coming out the door. Hey, can you sign this? It was always like I got a purpose.
Right.
So when I go to a social event, I'm very like focused on getting stuff done, and that's beneficial because that's the only way I can approach people. Like, it may be terrifying to go up to somebody and be like, hey, I like to get your business card or whatever. But because I have that purpose, it makes it less terrifying. If it's just like, we're at a social event, mingle, I'm like, nope. But if I'm like, this guy is the owner of this venue that I'm trying to throw a show at next week, I am like, okay, this is purpose focused. So I can like get to that place if I need to, even though it's very hard.
Yep. That's a perfect way to explain it. That's when I know what I'm there for. That's what I mean by not timid. If I know what I need to go do, I can go do it. Where I am timid, and I hate saying timid for introverts because I don't think it's a one-to-one analogy, and a lot of times that gets thrown in there. But there are things that I think will exacerbate the timid part of you. For instance, roller skating, right? Very similar to going to a dance. When it was couples stuff, I immediately vacated the floor. But again, because I'm like, first of all, I'm not that great of a roller skater. I'm there for the music. I do like roller skating, right? Roller skating's cool because I'm listening to the music that I'm listening to, right? I used to cry for my parents. We had a roller skating place right like 2 blocks away. And it closed down probably when I was like 12. And then another one further away opened up. And I went to that till I was probably like 22, and loved it. Did some shows there. It wasn't the same spot, but they did that couples joint stuff. I probably danced couples once in my life from somebody who went roller skating probably 100 times. Probably roller skating 100 times, at couples once. And again, it was a situation where someone's like, hey, do you want to come skate with me? When they're playing, some dirty dancing or something or whatever the slow songs are that they'd play, which out of nowhere. Most of it would be like disco rap all day. And then they'd play some like pop song from like 10 years ago or something. And it'd be this slow dancing joint. They'd never play the cool stuff. Once in a while, they'd play some New Edition or something like that. But for the, when I got a little older, it'd be like the silk kind of joints and stuff like that. But but for the most part, it was like that for me was like, okay, get off the dance floor. Like, I don't even want to be seen. I don't even want to be put out there like I'm looking. I'm also similar. I don't ask for anything. Like, there's lots of help I could use. I don't ask for anything ever because I don't really want to go engage and have the conversation. So if there's somebody over there, I need to, like you, have made the plan. Like, I'm going here for this and this is going to happen. Then I'm good. But if it's something that pops up in the minute, I'm like, I probably shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that person can help your career. That's exactly why I'm not going to go over and talk to them because it's so it's so predictable that I'm going to go over there. They're probably thinking about what I'm walking up to even talk about. And I'm like, I don't even want to put myself out there. So that whole not wanting to put myself out there kind of thing feels very wallflower-ish to me as well. And it's like, which one is exacerbating the other? Is it because I'm a wallflower, you know what I mean? Or is it just because I don't want to be rejected? And that to me, that's been a big thing. I've had like probably 2 women say no in terms of like going out because I've pretty much not really asked anybody to go out in the big picture of it. I've probably dated, I said this to my wife when I met her, talking about how many people you dated. She's like, you really want to know that question? And I'm like, I've dated like 11 in my entire life, and that includes like, one date, you know what I mean? It's like 11 people, you know what I'm saying? And she's like, oh, like most women, it's like over a course of like 2-3 years, you know what I mean? I'm like, no, that's my whole life.
Right. Well, I think that goes back to the purpose because like if you're an introvert, you tend to be purpose focused. So you're not just purpose focused like in the micro event, like in the macro of your life. You're like, hey, how are you helping me on the way to where I'm going in my life? So we're not just introverts are probably not just randomly dating people because it's like, oh, just somebody to date. Like that idea of just like dating somebody because like I never understand when people say like, oh, I haven't been in a relationship in a while. I was like, is it a requirement? Like people talk about these relationships as if you're required. Oh, when was your last relationship? It's like,
Who
I
cares?
don't know. It's like, is this a driver's license renewal?
Yeah.
Like, so I think, yeah, I mean, I'm similar. It's not like, this long list of anything. It's just
Yeah.
like, uh, what's the purpose of it? But
Hmm.
you made me think about the roller skating thing. So when I was in 5th or 6th grade, like, yeah, I had friends. We would go to this skate rink, and they had arcade games.
Oh yes, the
But
arcade games were key.
I definitely remember though the couple skate thing. But
Oh
I
yeah.
was never like a person who was like, oh, I don't want a couple skate. It was just like, yeah, I don't have
No,
anybody to
I
couple
did.
skate with.
I did want a couple skate.
Right.
But I wasn't asking anybody. I was like,
Well, no, but here was the thing with this one. They said it's couple skate or backward skate if you're
yes,
low.
backward skate. Yes, I remember that. Yes,
So
yes,
I was
yes.
like, yo, this is so
I was
discriminatory.
not good at backward skating either.
Because
Like,
I
it's
was
a
like,
very
why
good
are y'all
chance
trying
I'd
to like
follow.
why are y'all trying to like draw this out? Like trying to like focus the attention. Oh, if you don't have a date or you can't backward skate, get off the floor. And this is like,
This dude yesterday, I asked him in the workshop, I was asking people to stand up and actually say something that you're good at. Could be anything, right? And I said, I'm congratulating y'all because I wouldn't do what y'all just did.
right.
Like, there's nothing that would make me stand up. So I'm asking them to do so. I was talking about that before. It's like saying ho to the show. Like, I'm asking them to do stuff like I wouldn't do, which in general goes against my motto. You know what I mean? Like if I'm somebody's manager, I'm not gonna ask them to do something I wouldn't do. But at a show,
Right.
it's like, you're taking on that kind of thing. But I was really trying to get to a point, and this dude said roller skating. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, it must be like, Blade. He mustn't be like the old school roller skates. So when I started roller skating, it was old school. It was like 4 wheels and the little rubber stopper in the front. And then only much, much later did come the blades, And
Right.
I look at the people with the blades and I'm like, yo, they're so smooth with it. Like, those blades to me are deadly weapons. Like, I would trip myself on those. Like, I can go fast and I can go straight. When I start going backwards, watch out. So I've always known that I wasn't really good at the backward skate too. So that didn't help. But like you, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I would love to. Like, like I said, I wanted to go to the dances for the same reason. Like, there were plenty of women. I'd be like, oh yeah, I'd love to.
Right.
Like, see what would happen. But I'm like, nope. And my first girlfriend was my next door neighbor. And
Right.
she was, her parents were divorced, and she only came in the summer. And so that was
Right.
devastating. It was like, oh, and she had to go back home. And that was like when I was like 12. And then she went to my middle school. But she only went 1 year because most of the time she was going back. She went 1 year. Actually, she went to a year and a half. And then she bounced, and she didn't do that again. And it was like, literally, you had to be my neighbor for me to, and I remember her sitting in front stoop, and one day she's like, I really like, we'd known each other for like 3 years. And one day she's like, I like you. And I was like, I like you too. She's like, no, I like you more than a friend. And I was like, what does that mean? I was like, uh-oh. I was like hoping for it, but I was like, now what? You know what I mean? I was just so move making, even at that age,
Right.
And even my wife, like I said, I've seen her for 5 years. I saw my wife and I was like, I will not stop until I date her. Like, it's gonna happen,
Right.
And actually, by the time I got to that age, like the last 2 girlfriends before her, I was like, those are definitely, they don't know it yet, but they're my girlfriends, And
Well,
I wasn't even trying to date them. I was like, they're gonna be my
right.
girlfriend. And my wife, I was like, she's gonna be my wife.
Well, see, here we go. So I'm not gonna say too much because I want to save this for like the dating episodes. There should be more than one, but back to the wallflower idea. If you're an introvert, your approach is long term and it's purposeful.
Yep.
Not to say that extroverted people don't have purpose, but it's more that the introvert is like, the introvert looks at someone and says, I would like to actually get to know you like as the full person you are. And like, here's the thing, I don't understand dating. I've never understood dating. It's like, I'm gonna put on a suit, you can put on a dress, we're gonna meet at this place, we're gonna get a menu, we're gonna say what looks good to you, what looks good to you. So like, this whole idea, like you can date somebody on a date and be like, oh, this person wasn't for me. I'm like, okay, sure, if there was no physical attraction, that's like maybe like, okay,
Right.
that's not gonna go any further. But what do you mean we're gonna sit here for an hour and be like, oh, he was a nice guy or he wasn't interesting? So you didn't even talk.
Yeah.
You didn't even talk about anything.
You're trying to hide
Probably
your teeth
just
while you're eating and stuff.
you probably small talked about basic stuff that
Small talk
everybody
paradise.
talks about. You didn't actually talk about each other and get to know each other. So I think when you're an introverted person, you're much more like, let's be actual friends first and hang around one another and get to know you as you are, naturally, organically. And then it's like, oh, well, let's grow that into more than a friendship, because now I've actually developed a true friendship with you. Now I know I can be with you in any state because we're actually friends first.
I had an argument about this with a woman actually, and it was when I was in college, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna set you up on a blind date." I was like, "No, you're not." And she was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna set you up." I was like, "No, I can't do blind dates." And she's like, "You're so shallow." Is it just? It had nothing to do with the look.
Shallow.
It was the opposite. It was because what you just said. I want to know who I'm investing my time in, what they're about. Nothing I feared more than a blind date with somebody. Because, like you're saying, the date is the most awkward part. If I'm with you in a natural, organic situation, I'm like, "Yo, this person's cool." Then I can formulate in my own head, boy, I'd like to take this person out. Like, and it would be cool because I've already met you and I kind of know what you're like. My wife, I went out to breakfast with my wife like 3 or 4 times, and my other friend was there. She was like friends with both of us or whatever. It was like probably the 4th time I was kind of smitten by that point. You know what I'm saying? But it was like, there was no fear when I did ask her out later down the line. It was like, I already knew who she was. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm making this investment right here. Like,
well, here's the other thing. The wallflower thing now presently has gotten even worse, where it's now like even identified as like stalker. You know, like if you're just a person, if you're observant, you're just like you're saying, there's probably like people at work now who I've seen for years, like, man, this person is beautiful. And man, I like to get to know this person. And I still, you know, haven't gone up and talked to them, but just watching from afar, you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's, you know, that's like, now you're a stalker if you're like not going up to somebody right away and saying like, hey, let's go. It's like, I'm observing this person from afar,
exactly.
right? I'm watching what they do. I'm not watching their every move, but I'm taking into account like who they are, how they interact. I'm getting the whole picture of who they are, because especially if you're actually going to get married, right? Obviously, you can't know everything about a person from watching them from afar. You're eventually going to talk to them and get to know them. But I mean, see, this is interesting. This crosses over into like Christian culture, because for a while people were big on this idea of courtship, where they were telling people don't date. Man, that's a whole episode.
And then Christian Mingle came out and it put an end to
that. No, but there was the church I went to in college too. Yeah, we can get to this in the dating episode. But they were talking about you shouldn't date. You should do more of a court model, which is you just be friends. You get to know each other in a non-romantic context, and then over time you get to know each, because you're allowing yourself to be yourself. You're not putting pressure on them or you to like be the perfect date.
Yeah.
So in one sense, it's like when you allow yourself to see who that person is around other people, you're like, oh, this is who you actually are.
See, I project better on a date than I really am. Like,
I think everybody does.
Yeah.
Because you know the rules of the game.
Yeah, I'm able to I'm like, okay, again, it's like acting. Like, it's like, oh yeah, I can act. Like I'm gonna truthfully act within my plus or minus, but you're getting the most polished version of me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, okay, I'm already telling myself, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. The things that you typically might do, you know, like, you dummy. You know,
that's why I don't want to do that. Okay, well, here's the interesting though. It's not like
hold on one second. Let's say this too. Tree. She got a couple comments here. Roller World on Route 1 was my spot. I would battle other girl dancers. Didn't wear skates much. Was there for the music. And then she put this, which was kind of sad. She put, nobody ever asked me to skate couples anyways.
She was waiting on Pro. She was waiting on someone like Pro.
You were waiting on me. You know, it's funny. If you were at Route 1, you were waiting, because I went to Route 1. She's from Massachusetts too. I went to Route 1 once or twice. So here was my lineage of, and this is going to date me. Everybody who knows me knows what I'm going to say if they're watching this later or watching it now. It was definitely the Hi-Hat in Lowell. Was the first place I went roller skate. I was crushed when that closed. Everybody's from Lowell went to the Hi-Hat. It was like the spot. And then it was the Route 3 skate in Tingsboro. Tingsboro, Mass was just on the border of Nashua, New Hampshire. So like all the cool kids were hanging out at Route 3 skate. And that Route 1 joint, I know what you're talking about too, the Route 1 spot. But yeah, I just had to get that out. It's funny because I forget that I'm in VA. You know what I mean? I see a comment. I'm like, oh, too bad. She is from Boston. I'm like, oh yeah. She knows where I'm from.
So I think, the date idea, I mean, okay. You grow up in a culture which I think is heavily oriented towards extroverts, school, work, dating. So the rules are already in place for the more extroverted person to their personality to win.
Absolutely.
Right. You know, it's like you approach a person, you get the phone number, you make small talk, you make them laugh, and that was always the thing. You make small talk, 5 minutes, get the girl to laugh, you get her
Yep.
number, you're out of here, and you're like, who can do that? Like that's what we've all been told to do though. Like I'm gonna go up to this girl, get her phone number, and then I've got the holy grail. Then on the date, she looks perfect, you look perfect. You don't like you say you don't say this. Like that's how all this stuff is defined. Don't say this. Don't be yourself.
It's
Like
don'ts.
don't say this. Definitely
Yep.
don't say. It's like, well, number one, you're gonna have to get to that stuff eventually.
I have way less don'ts now, though. I'm actually like a decent catch now. like I had to work through some stuff to get to this version of me. You know what I mean? Like, if you can deal with an introvert, which was tough for my wife. Otherwise, I'm not that bad.
But there's all this like, don't say this. I had a friend. He's like, you're not supposed to talk religion or politics on a date. He's like, well, then, like, how are you really going to get to know what the person thinks? And it's like, yeah. Then those people get married. And so I didn't know you were anti-abortion. I didn't know you were for abortion. It's like, well, we should have talked about this. I'm not saying you had to bring that up on the first date. Obviously, I would be like, let's do it on the first date. Because I'm like, let's get into it. Like, let's just see where we're at to see if this is even worth pursuing. Yeah. Like, if we're at fundamentally different places in who we are, there's no point of us dating because we're eventually going to just say, hey, we can't get married. We can't even, not to say you couldn't be friends, but we're not going to agree on certain things. And it's going to cause a lot of conflict. If I want to give my money to this candidate and you want to give your money to this candidate, like, why are you going to wait till you actually put money into a wedding and a life and a house and ring and kids?
Yeah, that's a lot. I think actually religion is a distant second to politics in terms of like what's more difficult. Like religion, I mean, unless it's like hardcore atheists and hardcore born again, like that's probably not going to work for very long, if at all. But the politics thing, though, because so much is political, especially now, and it is so polarized that it's like pick a team is what it feels like a lot.
Right.
And truth be told, most of my life as a kid, I was centrist or right leaning. I've gotten more and more left, and people, it's funny, they say as you get older, you get more and more right. But like, I would need to know, like if I was going to date somebody, I would need to know. And I know we don't want to make a dating issue, so we should probably segue off of this in a second, but we can do that in that other issue. But what's making you lean the way that you do? Because for me, if it's social issues, I'm going to have a tough point with it. Like, I get it if you want to save money on taxes. You know what I'm saying? I get it. I even get it if it's an abortion thing or if it's a religion. I get that. Those make sense. Those make sense of why you'd align yourself with one party or another, right? What I have the problem with is it like if it becomes like sort of a like this social justice warriors and all that. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get you might be irritated by the media's portrayal of stuff, but I care about the cause. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be a tough day at the office for that because I'm gonna be like, "Viva la revolution," and you're gonna be like sitting there like, "Oh, I want to watch a soap opera or something." It's like, oh. Okay. Soap opera's cool, but what are you doing after?
Or what are you doing after?
Yeah.
Well, the last thing I'll say about dating, because that's gonna be a whole man. That could be how many part series. But yes, recently
we might need an actual guest to that. But I don't know if we can accomplish it.
Oh no, we can accomplish it. I can do a whole thing solo. Trust me.
I gotta think about that.
But yeah, recently same thing. Like you just said, like someone tried.
Because I only have 11 to pick from.
Someone tried to set me up. And I was excited. I was like, oh, this is great. Because I'm not against dating or the idea of a date. I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. Like, yeah, go talk to somebody, get to know them. But I had a similar disagreement. Like you were saying, like I was saying, look, I know what I want. And I think that's the thing about a lot of introverts. Like we know what we want.
Yeah.
And I think that's not how it's often presented in the dating. It's like, oh, you got to find people out and you don't know what you want. I was like, but I do. Yeah. Like I hate when people try to put that on me, but you could never know. It's like, I know, right?
There's definitely, I do too. And I have been in relationships with people that I knew did not check off the boxes. Like and I knew the time was probably limited, but it was like, there was no reason yet. It was just like, like there's like 5 things on this thing that just, we either got to address them or whatever. And they weren't going to change. And like, I needed to make the change, it's like I needed to be like, yeah, I'm good. But yeah, I've been because, you just let it play out, I guess. And I get your point. It's like, you want to know up front. And trust me, I do too. I want to know everything. I want to figure it out. I want to do, and just in my own moment of weakness and being like, oh, okay, well, I'll try it. Like
Right.
dumb, like in retrospect, real dumb, and people probably, again, who know us personally, would probably know which individual situations you're referring to, so it's like, yeah, definitely.
But this goes back to the observer part, because, okay, let's say you're watching somebody from afar, you're getting to kind of get a sense of who they are, and also you know yourself very well. So it's not that you're shallow, it's just like I've done enough observation over time that when I see somebody presented to me, I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. It's not shallow. It's not like, oh, you didn't give them a chance. It's like they did something pretty early that was a big signal that they're not going to get me
Yeah.
in a way that's going to work. So why continue to move forward just so we can like go on some dates and get to know each other? It's just a waste of your time and a waste of my time.
Right.
But I think if you're a people person and you really like friendships, I thought about this several years ago. I think the extroverted person, they like people and friends. So any person they meet is an opportunity just to get to know someone. So they're willing to jump in. Let's jump in head first. And who knows, we'll still be friends. Where the introvert's like, no, like as I said, friendship is a coupon. It's a membership only. So I'm not looking to jump in head first, hoping I'll come out with a friend. I'm very focused. I know what I want. This is what I want. I'm not looking to like try it out and then get a friend as a like consolation prize.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the extroverted person is willing to just go on date, because in their mind it's like, oh, another friend, another person, another person I have on my phone, another friend. Introvert's like, person who's going to waste my time, person who's going to waste my time, person who's going to waste my time, person who's going to waste my time. When you see somebody who's not going to waste your time, you zero in on them. When it's like, I'll sit on a date with you because you might be already far enough along where it's like, okay, this is worth pursuing.
Yeah. I'm like that on social apps too. It's like, I use Clubhouse, for example, since we're also on Clubhouse, is I will, someone will add me and I'll look at their profile usually pretty quickly. And if it doesn't immediately speak to me, I'm not adding the person. Like, last thing I want is a bunch of people that, are just filling up when I'm trying to find someone on there too, it's irritating. I know they have a search thing, but I just, most of the time, just looking real fast. And I'm like, Who are these people? Or like one of the functions on Clubhouse that I can't stand is that when you're going to ping someone, you can't see anything about them. I don't remember your name. I don't know who you are. I see your face and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. I remember faces really well. And if someone changed the photo, forget about it. So if I can't look in and see like what you did, like what are the highlights, man, so I just look at everybody's highlight. Now sometimes you don't have time, right? And someone just adds you have no idea, right? It's like 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, I added you. That's just how Clubhouse works, more so than I think most apps. But I'm the same way on like Instagram and all this stuff too. If you follow me, fine, but feel no pressure for me to follow you. It's like, and I do when I read it, even if I don't know the person, and I'm like, oh, that's, it's in my world. I'm like, okay, I'll add that. But people will add me, and I'm like, why did they add me? Like, it's almost like dating. I'm like, there's nothing here in common in the friend world that, and if I see somebody who's like Bitcoin or whatever, automatic. Nope. Financial advice. Nope. If people even say the words financial advice, I'm already like I'm not a blocker, but I'm definitely a non-adder. There's nothing I can't stand more than hearing somebody want to tell me about financial advice. And it's like, here, back to, you brought this point up too. I wanted to go back to it. You were talking about the extroverted world and how it's already set up for winning. I was a business major. Every business major but me was an extrovert. I feel like, if I'm wrong, I don't know who it was. And you know how many I know? 2. One of them was Ted Panagiotopoulos. He was Greek. I'm half Greek, and his father owned a Greek pizza place that I went to. I know Ted. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know Ted. That's who I know. Everybody else have no idea who they were. So I went to college with these people for 4 years and have zero idea of who they were. Like, people like, oh, do you still hang out with people from college? I know Fee, who I've been friends with forever, who went to my college. A couple other people from my high school went there, and I know Ted. You know what I'm saying? That's it. I wasn't trying. And every single business person was full of fluff, nothing, pretty tie, and they were going to try to sell me something because they had a pretty tie and they were sociable. And that, to me, I mean, I'm really pigeonholing that. Definitely. What does it sell? Reinstall, restart later. I just like, the business major, especially, and I was marketing too. you know, and like trying to market myself in music, something I need to study, right? I need to go study marketing, right? It doesn't come natural to me. Now I kind of get it. But that world was just people who could talk and talk and talk and sell you anything was everybody that was in my
Right.
marketing class. And I want nothing to do with it. If I see people from far away, you're talking about posting up on the wall, playing the wallflower, I'm just looking. I'm like, please do not call me. It's funny. I said, please do not call me. And my friend's calling me on my phone as we speak. But yeah, like in Bitcoin or personal advice, and maybe that's what it is. I'm just like, I think of those bad memories of all those people I had in business. I loved business school. I had no problem with it. I learned a lot. I just wasn't
Right.
hanging out with anyone. I have some friends from college that I played like basketball with or met it or whatever. I'm not hanging with them like that or anything, but they certainly weren't in my business program. They spoke a
Right.
different language.
Well, I think the word wallflower. Okay, we're gonna do a whole bunch of episodes that just focus on certain words that have been used to attach themselves to introverted types. I think wallflower is similar to what I say about antisocial. It's a word that's been created to define the introvert from the extroverted point of view. It's just like, why are you not talking to me over here? It's like, why are you over there on the wall? Why is there something wrong and different about you who's out apart from where the social interaction is happening?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, one, I think everybody has the right and the freedom to be the way they are wherever they go. So if someone shows up and they want to stand on the wall and observe, why not? That's I don't know. I'm like, some people call it people watching, right? So I mean, a lot of times I'm like that. I'm at a party. I'm just watching who's doing what. I'm like taking in the whole thing. I'm probably writing something in my head or getting an idea for something I'm gonna write, or taking an idea back with me, like, oh, that little interaction, or that I'm listening to conversations. I'm gonna go write a movie script or something.
Yeah.
So I guess I see social interactions as a way to gather creative material. Doesn't necessarily mean I have to interact with you. So I think that's a very nuanced place to be, because I know someone who said she was very introverted, but she liked to be around people. So she said she might go out somewhere and work on her whatever she's working on, but there just had to be people around. And I feel like I got some of that in me too. Like on a Saturday, like I would go out to the coffee shop, headphones, laptop, music, but there was something about people being around. It's sort of like the energizer thing happening. So I know a lot of people don't get that because their purpose is to talk to people.
Right. I
I was like,
totally got what you said. I totally got what you said. I was
I
like,
think my
oh, that's
purpose,
well said.
my purpose is just to like have people in existence.
In existence, right? Like,
You're
remember what I
you're
said about the
there,
restaurant? Like, yo, I'm cool that a dude came in the restaurant and he's sitting over there. You know what I'm saying?
right?
Like I like it. I like that the fact that there's people there. I like the fact that I'm also not sitting with you, but that's just me. You know, like I want to know you're there and it's a living. Like I like the city. I can't live in a
Right,
super remote place. I like the hustle and bustle. I get all that.
right,
I'm just not interacting with you. I want to know that I can go to the spoken word place down the corner and I can go rock it. I want to know that I can go watch somebody dope down there. I got Busboy and Poets on the corner next to me. And by the way, next to me is Shirlington. It's this little like fake city, like one of these little pop-up cities or whatever that's in between Arlington and Alexandria and DC. And Shirlington has one of these little pop-up cities. They have my little AMC movie theater right there, and it's small just for me. They got a Busboy and Poets. They got a couple other little restaurants. I can dip in, dip out. Go there, see the people doing their thing. That's cool. I go in real anonymous, do my thing, boom. And from afar, I'm always checking out. I'm like, yo, what's at the movies? Can't wait to go by myself, you know? And I'm like, I might go check out one of those restaurants over there and grab something, take out, you know? But I might sit in the actual restaurant, non-COVID times, of course, would have been much more.
right.
But there's a couple little spots over there that I'm always looking for that little spot, but I don't want it to be a spot that's completely empty. So I'm exactly with you on that. Like, I just don't feel that like, and if something spontaneous happens and there's someone in there and I'm like, and they say something, whatever, cool. You know what I'm saying? I'm not
Right.
like, oh no, people. I like the people.
Right.
I say it in my new song coming out. My shameless plug, 318. Yo, that's pro. I mean, I say on Sony Ocean, Freedom Corner Records. I say in that, I say I love people. I never want to tear them apart, but some kids are mean even before they turn teens. Made me want to stick to myself and stick to my team. A small circle was really never one for the fanfare till I made my first fan. Now I understand real clear. I feel the pain of others sincere and vividly, so I don't have to live it to know and show them some empathy. That's my whole credo right there. And that's why that song is kind of lo-fi too, because it kind of is like It's kind of that lo-fi vibe, and just like saying it like, yo, people are cool. I love people. I'm not trying to hang out with 100 of them at one time. That's it.
Right.
Not all people are cool. Some people are ridiculously weird too, and that's another thing. My son sometimes will ask me like, "Daddy, how come I don't trust people?" I got to tell you straight up, like he's like, "Daddy, why can't?" Okay, all right, really make me tell you. Some people are really weird, son, and and I do not trust them on first glance, and I don't want to scar you too badly, but I'm going to,
Right.
assume the worst,
Assume the worst.
like assume the worst to be pleasantly surprised later. That is my credo. Yeah.
Well, I think it's all about. Okay, man. I should draw a diagram on this one of the episodes. I think there's like how you have like these diagrams about like the outermost circle and then the inner circle and then like the outer circle, the next circle, then the innermost circle. So I guess I would say if there was an outermost circle, maybe that's social events, and then the innermost circle would be like a marriage and friendships.
Mm-hmm.
So in the outermost circle, I think that the right to be left alone definitely supersedes the right for you to interact with that person. So if I'm like you say, if you're sitting in a restaurant, somebody comes in and they're like, "Oh, I would like to talk to the person." It's like, no, their right to be left alone supersedes your right to want someone to talk to.
Agreed. Yep.
You don't know them. They're over there. You can say hi.
Right.
But
and
the
you
fact
could
that you
even
think
ask a question or whatever, and then
right.
you go back to your spot.
Right. But
I'll tell you if it's different. I'll say, "Hey, come on, sit down." You know what I'm saying? Rare.
But the fact that you think you're going to come over near that person and start talking, I think, okay, here's all that's really required. I think the only thing that's really required is asking. And this is the one small thing that most people don't even think to do. To say like, "Hey, do you mind if I talk to you?" Like, I know most people don't want to do that because they assume that talking to you in and of itself is the like invitation or the like question. But to literally say, "I'm sorry, are you busy? Are you focused?" People don't do that.
I respect that person, and I'm more likely to have that person sit down. I'm like, yeah, you can sit down. Yeah, thanks. Otherwise, if you didn't start with that, no. I mean, that's generally my default.
Right.
Yeah.
So the innermost circle, I guess, would be like friendships marriages where there has to be a conversation between the two people that says, "Look, we're married. I tend to like to go out and be with people. You tend to like to stay in. So what are we going to do to coexist in a way that honors both of our ways of being?"
You spying on my wife and I?
No, I'm spying on life.
Sounds like a wallflower in my house.
Fly on the wall flower. That's what we should have called this, a fly on the wall flower.
Yes.
I'm spying on everybody's. Okay, because so in that case, you've committed to a person to the point where you live together. So there's more at stake. There's more time spent together. So you have to kind of negotiate and like, "Hey, I know this is harder for you, but I really need this," and vice versa. So obviously on some level, there's not the need to ask as often. I think still asking would be like, if I had a wife who asked me, I'd be like, you are the woman. Like, to the day we die, if she just said like, "Can you talk right now?" I'd be like, "Thank you for asking. Just thank you." Like, now I'll give you permission to never ask again. But I think, if you're in a marriage, which I've not been in and I'm not in now, I think there's an assumption like, "Hey, we live together. Yours is mine. Mine is yours." So the boundaries get a little more blurred. So if your wife comes down or your husband comes down, you're probably not going to say, "Is it okay to talk?" They're probably just going to start talking to you because they're going to say, "We got to do this. We got to do." But there still are certain circumstances. I think if you see somebody literally focused on something, it's still, as a human, good to be like, "Hey, see you're focused. Are you good to talk?"
Yeah.
"Okay, when can we talk?" "Oh, an hour? Great." So I definitely think the thing we're commenting on the most is probably the non-marriage stuff, because this is where a lot of the problems happen. Is like, you're just out and people just have these assumed social cues and lack of boundaries that I see somebody alone, I can come up and talk to them, and that's the way things are. That's how you talk to somebody. It's like, no, that's how you talk to people, but maybe that person doesn't want that.
The thing that will upset me later is the after the fact, when they reveal their hand, when they say, after they've gotten to know you, they sat down, they've talked or whatever, and they say, "Hey, I'm really glad we talked, because when I first looked at you, you look kind of like scary and off-putting." And then I'm like, okay, so really you're the extrovert. That's extrovert speak. That's the you knew enough not to say it up front.
Right.
but part of the reason you came over was because you had to fix something. You had to fix, like, it made you uncomfortable that I didn't look the
Interesting.
way that you defined comfortable. Why? Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a
Interesting.
lot of that. Like, hey, I just want to make sure everything's okay. And some people will lead on the other side. Like, I was saying, and I love obviously my wife and my brother-in-law to death, but we had this discussion. It's kind of a tangent here, but they're both heavy extrovert and people, right? They're people, and they love, like nobody's business, seeing good customer service. And so they were talking to me one night. We were out to dinner, and they were talking about, oh, you would love this like hotel. It's like a 4-star place and it does all this great stuff. And I was like, no, I actually wouldn't. And so we got into this big conversation about it, and they were looking at me like I was crazy. My wife kind of knew, and my brother-in-law was like, what? And I was like, I don't want anyone waiting on me to do stuff. And he's like, how is that possible? I'm like, no, trust me. I like a comfortable room and a bed. And if
Right.
somebody came and did stuff while I wasn't there, but if somebody tending to my needs, I'm saying, please leave me alone. And I can't,
Right.
but I don't say that. I've never said, please leave me alone. I mean, that would be just rude. But in my head, I'm like, I'm showing it on my face. I'm like, no, I'm good. Nope. No, I'm all set. Nope. Doesn't that sound like I'm saying, can't wait for you to leave? To me, that's what it's saying, the tone of the way. No, I'm good. No, I'm all set. No, thanks. No. If someone ever says, hey, is there anything I can get you? I always say no. Like, there's never been a time where I've said that I can think of that there's somebody that, especially that I don't really know well, hey, can I just get you anything? Unless it's the waiter, right? And you heard me the other night telling you about this restaurant I was so excited about. I was like, yo, what was my first question? I was like, so in the day, and the guy must have thought I was totally nuts. I was like, so in the day, this restaurant you have right here, do you actually have waiters, or can you just sit anywhere? He's like, no, you just sit anywhere. I was like, coming to this place, because I don't even want the person coming over to ask me. I know that sounds loony, but I don't want you messing with me. I want to be left alone, and I want to go over to the spot that I want to be at. That's it. I don't want pampering. Pamper me from afar. Clean my house. Do all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like, and I don't have to see you. That's great. I mean, and I like people. I know that sounds like someone that doesn't like people, but no, it's not true.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been like, the thing is, you're not aware of it until someone makes you aware. Like, when I was younger, going into the grocery store or whatever store, I didn't. If no one came up to me, I was fine with that. I was like, I don't want you to ask me, can I help you find something? And then one day my parents like, if you go into a store, someone's supposed to approach you within a minute and ask you for it. I was like, oh, now I know this, and now I'm thinking customer service mentality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was definitely like that. Like, when people say, can I help you? I was like, nope, I will search for an hour and figure it out.
I'm dying for it. I'm moving the other way. I'm so, like, you talk about being aware. I go in the store and I see someone coming near me. I pretend I don't see them and start going the other way because I know they're going to ask me if there's anything to help you. Nope. And if they do catch it, I'm like, no, I'm good. Nope, thanks. All set.
Before you even say,
I'm like, let me grab my phone. Oh, yeah, I'm good. Yeah. So, like, I guess that is a little weird as I say it out loud. I'm like, it does sound a little more like antisocial than I think of myself. But and again, if you take these tests, these online tests, if I'm going to answer that truthfully, like, that's going to get the weird score. You know what I mean? It's like, are you more likely to avoid a crowd? Yeah, I'm more likely to avoid a crowd. Like I said, I don't go to parades. I don't sense a baby. Like, I mean, that is the nature nurture thing. Like, my nature is hardwired to not want to be around big crowds and big noise. So it lends itself into a lot of the aspects of introvertedness. But I do like people. I find people fascinating. I find learning what I can learn from other people and what they don't know, what we know together, and sharing, and how we've, thousands of years on this earth, people have managed to do some amazing things. I'm like, how have we figured out this? This is just amazing, So people, animals, I love animals. Like, I could chill with animals all day long, probably more than I can with people, but love dogs. My son is like, oh, I'm so excited to get a dog. He's like, Daddy, are you excited? I'm like, Henry, I can't tell you how excited I am to get a dog. Like, Mommy knows how excited I am to get a dog. Like, it's great. Like, I love dog. Now, if you told me a relative was coming to visit for, like, a month or something, oh gosh, like, not all that excited with that, but the ones and the ones you get along with, it is a little different. But I'm just like, oh, is it going to be someone tending to my needs? And just like, and people think that's being so helpful, and it's really not to certain people, and it's just like, I know you're doing what you were trained to do, and it's just like, I'm telling you, don't do that for me. And they're looking at me like a zoo animal, like, what? How do you not want someone to? You don't want to? No, I don't even really want a massage. You know what I'm saying? Like, nah, I'm not really. Don't even. It's kind of awkward going
Right.
like the whole thing. I mean, I admit once I'm on the table, that I'm like, oh yeah, but my back was really holding that in, kind of,
Right.
But it's like, in general, just getting me there is the tough part. So, and
Well,
it
I
does
think
sound more awkward coming out than it really is. But
I mean, I think this is the quote I said on Friday that you liked. That said, your personality is just the appendage on the core of who you are.
yes, was it
So I
appendage?
think
Yeah, it was
the
appendage.
appendages, yeah.
Yeah, appendage. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
So that's where this conversation always takes me. Is always back to who are you? Who are you as a individual? Who is your individual identity? Because I think this will solve all these problems we're talking about. So, like your relative example. Okay, what's going through your head as a relative is coming? It's like, oh, this person's gonna come, and they're more outward oriented, and they're gonna
yeah,
want to say, hey, how you doing? And they're gonna want to talk, and they're gonna ask you a bunch of questions about stuff you don't care about, like, hey, how's school? How's work? Like, they're gonna give you like an interview process.
yeah. Right.
And
Shout out to Beverly, by the way. Yeah,
to
professes the
you,
thoughts of an extreme extrovert. Yes, that's you, not me.
so, so to you, the individual, especially a creative, introverted individual, you're thinking, as I said earlier, like when you see me do creative things, like that's when you've seen me. So first and
Right,
foremost, I'm feeling drained because I feel like you're just talking to Bernard the human, right? Like you're not talking to Bernard the person. You're just like, oh,
right,
here's Bernard, the guy who does the stuff at the school with the kids. He's the teacher, the rapper. Like they don't really know. They're
you're
not
right,
talking to me. They're just talking
right.
to the general you. And that's what I never understand, that interaction with people is like, I guess you feel it more acutely as an introvert, but even still, as a human to a human, like wouldn't you feel weird if I came up to you as, so how is things,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
Like wouldn't
absolutely.
you feel like weird if I didn't say like, hey man, how's your mom,
Exactly.
or
Yep.
like your dog, or heard
And
you
they'll talk
didn't
to you all day if you do. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right?
like
So it's like, so I think first it's a drain because they're tapping into like this sort of I always this I think that's why I've always feel this way. It's like an avoidance, like a deflection. It's like, oh, I'm gonna talk over here and then like over here and then up here, but I'm not gonna like talk right to you, especially if you've known me,
mhm.
especially if your family is like, yo, oh, that's right, you do music and stuff. But it's kind of like, hey, how's school going? That's great. That's good. Hey, how were you still your car going?
Mm,
What are you talking about? You're not
mhm.
talking about me. You're just talking. So that's the first reason. But I think the second reason I was thinking about was, if you know that you're gonna have to deal with all of that, um, when I was okay, so that's the reason why you feel that. I was saying, so the way to solve this is, if you know yourself as a person and you meet another person who knows themselves, you're gonna bypass all of that.
Yeah.
You're gonna go straight to what each other is. Like, oh,
Mhm.
that's right. You do the hip hop education thing. What's the latest hip hop talk you done? Oh, that's great, interesting. Well, you know what I've been working? I've been working in my garden. Like we said in another episode, I really don't care what you're into. Like you could be gardening,
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
could be like a stamp collection. But
Absolutely.
if you're bringing yourself to the table,
That's dope.
I'm like, oh, let us both connect with the true you, not these like
And
generalities
I
of
support that.
words.
It's like, when I find somebody that's into something, I support that. Like, I'm like, yo, that's so dope. Like, that's what I think about when I think about them. I think about, like, if you meet somebody or you're friends with somebody, normally the people that I'm friends with and that I generally like to be around are people that are about stuff. And because again, it feels awkward. Um, I almost have like an avoidance. Like, I will avoid you on purpose. If I know that, I guess it gets into your small talk thing, because it's like, it's going to make that weird kind of like, what are we talking about? We're talking about nothing, like, but I look forward to the people that I know are about something, because I want to, I'd be like, oh, what's up with blah, 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 whatever it is. And yeah, and they know the real you, and they'll ask, and they'll be like, hey, what's up with, like you said, what's up with the music and entertainment or whatever. Talk all day on that, but I'll also talk all day about what it is you have going on, if there's something that you have going on, and a lot of times too, I know in our worlds of sort of the outward facing introverts, it's that there's a lot of interest in because of the relative uniqueness of what it is that you do. So it does
Right.
spawn a lot of one-way conversation. You know, like people will come up and they'll lead with, you know, what it is that I'm doing. And, you know, like you said, I can go on forever about that.
Right.
Like I want to stop people sometimes and go, and I actually did it with you at the beginning of the show. You have no idea what I do in 2 days time. Like
Right.
it's mind blowing. What, especially when I lived in Boston, mind blowing. The things that I've managed to pack my day with, right? There's not a lot of wasted time unless I'm putting in time that I need to think about stuff or whatever. And a lot of that's in my car, but I'm doing so much that I can't wait to get back and knock some of those things out. And so the small talk frustration is that, yo, like, do you realize what I need to get done? Like I make it look pretty, I think I make it look like I'm pretty chill or whatever, but I'm like, yo, I can't wait to finish X, Y, and Z, whether that's the job, home, even if I'm at a show. I'm probably thinking about what I didn't do well at the show. And now I'm thinking about, oh man, I got to fix that rhyme. I can't wait to just find 2 hours. I do this a lot, by the way. I don't know if you do this, but I say in my head, I can't wait till I get 2 hours to do X. I got like 7 of those in my head right now.
Right.
And it's like, I got to find those 2 hours. You know what I mean? But you value things and you do things that you value. You're like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. You prioritize. And I got this running list of like at any given time, usually 5 to 10 things that it's like, you give me 2 hours by myself, that time's filled. And I'm looking forward to it because they're high up on the list, things that I want to do.
Right.
So if you ain't got those, it's like,
I think too, I'm always trying to like talk about balance because because I had experience several years ago where I was at home and I was like, oh, I really want to work on this poem or whatever. And it just wasn't happening. And I was like, oh, I got all this time. So I was like, all right, let me just go out. Maybe that'll help. So I went out, saw another friend. She was also a poet. We hadn't seen each other in a while. So then she started talking to me about stuff she was doing. And the whole time, like you're saying, I'm thinking in my head, I'm supposed to be writing right now. I'm supposed to be writing right now. I'm supposed to be writing right now.
It's like a burning buzzer. Yeah.
But she's talking and then she's saying stuff. I'm like, oh man, it's interesting. So it's like that conversation was necessary. Maybe not for even the poem I was writing that day, but just in general, I was like, oh, that was a good idea that she said. So now I'm like, oh man, I don't want to admit, but I'm kind of glad I had to talk to somebody today.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're introverted, there's definitely times where it's like, hey, you think you can only focus on your work, but it's actually talking to other people, even though you don't want to, which will give you some idea that will help your work. But that also goes for the extrovert.
Yeah, sure.
The extrovert, you think, oh, I need to go out and be around people and I need to talk and see what's going on. No, sometimes you need to stay at home and be by yourself and be quiet, and something will happen in your mind that when you meet, say, an introvert, you can be like, you know what? I actually read a book. The introvert will be like, you read what? And you did
You did who?
So you want to find a way to connect with people.
My tables. I can't put them on that place.
So you want to, like, for the introverted person, it's like you want ideas. Sometimes you need people. If you want extrovert, you want to connect with people. Sometimes you need ideas, especially if you're going to connect with an introvert, because you're going to say that would be my favorite phrase. Somebody say, you know, I had this idea today. I'll be like, oh, that's my favorite thing is when someone tells me an idea from their point of view, not just, hey, did you watch this new Netflix show?
Right.
Or if you say, you know, I watched this Netflix show, you know what I noticed about it? Oh yeah, tell me. Like, I love to hear the perspective that I can't get from anybody but you. But that requires for you to know that in yourself and to be able to tell me that. And then so I think that's what it is. Like I said, everybody is always looking for a little of themselves in the other person. Because I really like my perspective, and that's how I connect with myself. So that's how I feel like I can connect to you. Right?
Yeah, very true. Yeah. Very true. Very biased, but very true.
It's not biased. It's just like,
no, I mean, you know what you like. You know what you know what I mean?
Well, not even that. It's just like my way of being is to say,
works for you.
what is the unique point of view that I bring to the table? Since I know I bring a uniqueness to the table, I seek that uniqueness in others.
And what's funny is you also do it all the time.
Right. Yeah, that's another thing. That's my calling in life. So it's like triple for me.
That's it. Especially when you're writing about what that purpose is all the time. I talk about purpose all the time. Like, I'm very aware of my purpose, you know, like, and by the way, my purpose has multiple layers. I don't think it's one thing, you know, like, and it can change. That's why I write it down and look at it. I'm like, okay, like it's morphed a little bit over time, you know, like it's morphed, but I'm aware. And generally, this is the thing too. like generally I feel like I'm about good, and you want to leave me to the good that I'm trying to do. Don't
Right.
take me away from the good that I'm trying to do, because if I'm distractible, because I get into ideas. Someone can say something like you said, and I'm like, oh wow, like it reminds me of a book I haven't finished. And by the way, I have a lot of unfinished books. Like, let me tell you, I get to page 80, and there's a lot of stopping going on, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of, let me grab this book. Like, oh, like page 92. Oh, I got to read it in this. Like I got books all over the place that are read to like page 85, and in my head, just like those things that get done, I'm like, I can't wait till I get another hour or two so I can sit down and I can knock that book out. And it's bugging me that I'm like, I got this book on page 80 and I got to get, you were talking about that before. We've got to complete that thought and go back to, I'm like that with books too. I'm like, oh, it's killing me that I haven't got this one done. And so I'll feel like this almost stress and anxiety and I won't remember what it's from. And I'll be like, okay, sit back, chill. What are the things that are on your list? Because I don't really write down the list. I know the list mentally. I'm like,
right.
there's that song. There's this person I have to get back to. And I'm like, what stuff I have to do, and then what stuff I really want to do. I really want to write a rhyme about X, and I really have like these 8 books that I need to finish, because I think they're the fuel for what I'm next going to write. I'm always interpreting that, and I'm looking in the right direction of the things that generally tie back to my purpose. So I'm generally reading it's just like 5 domains that I'm generally into in terms of like the stuff that I'm reading, and they are all similar to 3 to 5 of those things are domains that I write about. So it's like, don't take me from my work of doing the good stuff that's on my purpose. And people can say that sounds self-centered, but it's like, I don't know any other way to explain it. It's like I've thought about ahead of time what it is that I'm about. I've written it down. I'm very aware. I know what I can do. I know what I need to improve, what I need to do more of, and where I need to steal time around the edges to get it done. So I don't mean that to sound that way. It's just like, I know the amount of time it's going to take, especially being a math dude. I'm always thinking about that stuff. I mean, it's basic math. It's like arithmetic. I'm like, my son will ask me, he'll like, Daddy, how did you know exactly how long it was going to take to get there? Because I thought it out ahead of time.
Right.
Thought in reverse. I'm like, okay, we need to be there at 6:30. It takes 14 minutes to get there. Okay, so 14 minutes from now, what else do I need to do? I got X, Y, Z, boom, 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 boom. Okay, we're going to be 8 minutes early if we leave it 2 minutes. With any unforeseen events. And, let me plan for the buffer and,
Right.
There it is.
No, I'm the same way. It's like every day I go to work, I'm like, it's 8:11. I was like, if I leave 2 minutes from now, I'm gonna be late.
Yes.
And I'm like, I get to the parking lot, I look at my phone, it's like it's gonna. I literally every day is like, okay, if I get, because like, okay, we have this clock-in system, and it's like if you clock in at like 8:37, it still counts it to 8:30, like it rounds it up to the half-hour mark. So I'll get there, it'll be like 8:34, and I'm like, okay. You gotta open the door, close the door, not talk to anybody. I can't put my lunch in the refrigerator.
I don't have time for that right now.
I got my key in my hand.
Once I get there, then I can go do lunch.
I'm getting the key. I got the key in the hand, like literally like a appendage going forward towards the door. People trying to talk to me. I'm like, hey, what's up?
What's wrong with you, Bernard? Because you sound exactly like me. What's wrong with you, Bernard? Shout out to Bev. Shout out to Beverly. But I love Beverly. I work with Beverly. She's amazing. I think that whether you're an introvert or extrovert, the situation dictates our response in an introversion or extroversion response. It has nothing to do with people. It has to do with energy. Yeah, that's so true. There's a lot about that is true. That the energy part is, I feel that energy. It's part of what I was talking about. Like when sometimes it translates as almost anxiety. When I know that person I'm talking to, I really have nothing to add, and that person's not going to add to what it's going to be. Those are the conversations I actually avoid. I'm like, I'm dreading actually thinking, and then there's people that you can't wait to talk to because they're always stimulating your mind with something. And I'm like, I'm gonna clear the schedule. You know what I mean? Like, Bev's coming by. Can't wait to hear what she's doing. And shout out to Bev. She's a great cook too. She has a cookbook out there. Got it in my kitchen. And I need to use it more often, Bev. I got to tell you, because there's been way too much takeout during the COVID time. And you missed the beginning of the show. And I was talking about today was the first basketball day with my basketball team. And I got done with that. And my wife and son, they were looking for some food. And I was like, I got a salad. And I was like, "Is a salad game is gonna be on and popping." Let me just tell you. Woo.
Well, if we talk about the energy part, I mean, let's go back to the wallflower idea. Yeah, I mean, it's not like well, let me think about this. Does the idea of just leaving the house and go to a social event, does that cause me the forethought of, oh, this is gonna drain my energy?
The wrong social event, it sure as heck does.
Well, I'm trying to think. Okay, like even when I went to go see my favorite bands, there was a certain level of like, oh, I'm gonna be standing up all night,
Right.
you know, and I'm gonna like have to. Well, also because I'm like I said, I got so much stuff. I'm got like stuff to get signed, so I'm holding it under my arm, so I'm like physically, but I don't know. I have to think about that more in terms of like, okay, when I think about going out to an event socially, am I already just like, oh, this is gonna be a drain? Or do I have a different example of like, oh no, this is actually going to be okay? I don't know. Let's say like let's talk about TEDx. We both done a TEDx. So the idea of going to a TEDx conference, I'm like, yes, like let's go, Like I'm gonna be on stage, being around it, being around the audience, talking with other speakers. There's one guy, I was helping him, I was listening to him. And like I was just sitting there. He's like, "You really grounded me." I was like, "I was just sitting there." I was like, but he was just like, "You're so calm." I was like, "All right, cool. Whatever I provided," as we talked about the nothingness, I provided the nonness. But like some people, maybe for them, that would put them full of anxiousness.
Yeah, the angst. Yeah.
If they had to speak, like I said, purpose. I know I'm going to speak. There was a little anxiousness, like, "Oh, I'm going to speak." But the idea, like I said, it goes like what I said at the beginning when I said I performed at a party and it was icebreaker. Even though I didn't perform yet or get on stage, there was the knowledge of like, oh, I'm in the program. Oh, they might have seen me in the program. So if they see me and they see my face, and I'm like, oh, you're giving a talk? It's like I can socialize with you because I'm there with a greater purpose. Right? But if I was just there as an audience member, I still would probably enjoy it because I would be because I think TED is probably a wrong example, but it's still as a worthy example because if the overall atmosphere is about ideas and thinking and talking, it's like you're already there with like-minded people,
right?
So you're already broken through all the small
that's
talk.
the draw of TEDs. Yeah, that's the draw.
Right.
Of TEDs. I feel like an entire TED crowd is a very introvert dominant crowd too. By the way,
right.
And they're out in public watching the TED.
But there's still, I'm trying to think too though. Yeah, I mean it probably is okay because like when you go to the lunch break or whatever, there's probably a sense of like, oh man, I'm gonna be sitting at a table full of people I don't know. So there's still a little anxiousness because you're used to that familiar, like, oh, we're just talking at lunch. But I think there's also in the back of your mind, it's like, oh, but we've already heard a bunch of ideas today, so we have something to talk about. Like the atmosphere has been injected with ideas to talk about.
I was looking at all the bios. I'm like, this is who I'm sitting with at lunch. I'm like, yo, this guy's talking about climate change, and he's in like looking at continental shift problems. I'm like, yo, these are the people that I'm pinpointing.
But I think that's it. Like, but if you go to a social event, maybe for the extroverted person, there's a sort of something in the atmosphere about what happened to you this week and what happened to you this week and how's your, like, they in their mind they're thinking, oh, we're going to talk about family, we're going to talk about, you know, what did you eat this morning and where'd you get that coffee and blah blah blah. So they are already kind of primed for their atmosphere, which is, it's about the social part, it's about updating each other, getting to know each other, you know, with the latest thing they've done. Whereas I'm like, I don't want to talk about any stuff. I don't want to talk about the coffee. I don't care. Like, I don't know what the brand is. Like, I want to tell you something about, oh, I saw this thing on Shark Tank. This guy made these coffee jewels. You put them in the coffee, it makes them hot and keeps them cool. Like, I want to tell you about something
Shark
about
so dope. I could
the
watch
coffee and like behind it. I don't want to say like, oh, I had good coffee. Or I would be like, yeah, I don't drink coffee at all. Let me tell you why, because I don't need it. Like, I'm going to talk about me.
That's me. I don't drink it at all. I don't even know what it tastes like.
So I think I guess you would say it's like how the two types share. Like the introverted person is like sharing ideas, and I think the extroverted person is sharing like each other, so to speak.
Yeah, that's dope. That's dope. When I was thinking a little bit about the TEDs, the crowd is generally a passive crowd too, meaning they're not a rah crowd all the time. I mean, you had a pretty good crowd at yours too, the one that you did, but I think that was on the strength of what you did. Was just like, how could you not? You know what I mean? You were like, I already told you about how you lined that up and nailed that. But the general TED crowd, I think they're there for the knowledge, but they're not there for the rah-rah kind of like, let's go up
Right.
and, let's be the cheering audience, and I did a little joke on mine, like I said, hey, how many people consider themselves like part of hip hop culture or whatever? And they raised their hand, and I was looking around. I'm like, come on, I'm asking about hip hop people. I'm like, you don't have to raise your hand. I'm like, make some noise, And they were like, hey, and it was so reluctant, and there was just the hands down. That I guess that's what I'm biased by. I think about most of the TEDs that I've been to, whether it's to watch or to participate, the crowd were pretty lame, to be honest. No, honestly, they're pretty lame crowds. I'll hear somebody say something, and I'm laughing. I'm like falling off my chair. I'm like, they didn't move. I'm like, what? Like, how'd you? Or something to be awe-inspiring, and it's just like, yo, did you hear what this man just said? Beverly put a comment here too. I'm gonna have to share this, Beverly, while you're watching. She wrote, Myers-Briggs in its purest form is extrovert. Introvert is based on where you get your energy. Yeah. And then she followed this up with interesting how you describe the extrovert. Let me share this. So I wasn't going to share it, as I don't want to lose the audience, but but let me see if I can put this up. I don't know if I have it. Let me put this up. So this is part of a presentation that I did yesterday for this group out in California. And let me go to where do I want to go? Here. So Bernard and I talked about this the other day when we were giving our preview. Oops, I didn't mean to go back to the beginning. When we were giving the preview, I didn't do from current slide. My bad. Let's go here. So this is the Big Five personality test. If you haven't done this one, they test you on what spells out ocean if you rearrange those letters and you do it in the right way. It's conscientiousness, open to experience, neuroticism, extroversion, and agreeableness. And that's the general purpose behind it. And that's where you can take the test. So if you want to take your own, if you haven't done it, it's truity.com. So truity.com. And these are my results. So this was my results of the for openness, C for conscientiousness, extroversion to be expected was low, agreeableness. I think I'm pretty agreeable, 71%. I'm not going to agree to your craziness, but I'm open to be wrong, is like what I say. And I find agreeableness and openness are similar. My openness was off the chain here. I don't know what happened there, but and neuroticism and emotional. So I wasn't stunned by that. But we were getting into the conversation, Bernard and I, earlier about this whole extrovert part. It said I kind of felt like I knew what the questions were asking. And
Right.
I felt like it would have actually been lower if I wasn't aware of what the questions were asking. Like, I was like, you're just trying to get me to say this. And I'm like,
Right.
I'm not. It was like 5-point Likert scale kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm way over on the left on this one, probably 0. But the way you're asking the question, I know that's what you're getting me trying to say. And it's not even in every situation. So
right.
It's like I needed some more background. And I started talking about the metacognition piece here and mindset. And I think it does go into that. That when you get into these kind of things, like your mindset, and when you get meta even about these tests, kind of like what you're talking about, Beverly, like what are they really saying? I know Carol Dweck goes off into a different area. Of course, we're talking about like wellness and all that stuff. And let me get rid of this. I went into some stuff that's happening in some other places. But I do love that one right there, the neuroscience that we talked about with the freestyle brain. But I just my biggest point. Let me stop this because I can't do two things at once with this. All right, I'm back. No, my biggest point with this is that you kind of are answering sort of to the test. And when I start getting meta about what's being asked, it can sway the way that I feel. And I think when I think about even the mindfulness component, and I think about wellness and mindfulness, I start doing my self-analysis based on where I think that I'm trending. and what's like, I feel saying, Bernard and I were talking about this too. I feel like I'm saying, what's wrong with me? Like I get this kind of self-analysis going on. And if when you're even asking the questions, I feel like somebody's over in the corner going, we know what he's going to answer. And I'm like, no, but you don't fully know me. So if you're saying, are you likely to avoid a conversation in public? The answer is yes, but it depends. If somebody came up to
Right.
me and they said something like, what we were talking about earlier, hey, I had this thought about, and they lead with, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? I'm already open to that, the way that you
Right.
presented it. So it's in general, yes, you're right. My default is some stranger comes up to me and they want to start talking. I'm usually looking to go the other way and have them not see me. But if it's someone I know, like Beverly, right? Like, door's always open, come on in. So it's no, I
Right.
can't ask the one on the far left. So I just started doing this meta analysis and start thinking about, like, what does this really mean about our underpinning? And I I'm not sure that the tests are the end all be all, I guess, is what I'm saying, because we can fudge it a little bit. And once I know, it's kind of like quantum science. Once the particle knows it's being studied, right, it changes, right? Like that's the
Right.
weirdness with quantum, right? The whole spooky action at a distance. I don't want to get all quantum on us, but like that's what happens, right? So it's like, I know I'm being studied.
Well, the way I think about this, always because I talk about this too when you get into like ideas of masculinity and femininity as well, is like these things are road maps. But even when you get a road map, like when you're in that city that you were traveling to, now you're okay. Where's that landmark? Okay,
Mhm.
like you now you got to get into the details where you're at. So that's why I always go back to the identity things. Like, okay, yeah, you can say you're introverted, and that's true because you need to be aware of that and aware of your strengths, your weaknesses, how you change in each situation. But then you can't be like, well, I'm introverted. Well, I do this, but I guess, but I'm introverted, so I don't do that. But it's like we
Right.
just said, it's not true all the time. Like,
Not all
okay,
the time.
you were telling your story earlier. So we had this festival that they do here. It's like innovation art. And so I put on, speaking
Maker
of all
Fest.
things,
Is that like a Maker Fest?
sort of. I mean, it's called Tom Fest, and it's supposed to be like a combination of entrepreneurship, art, music, all in one week.
Pretty much.
Different kind of like TED Talks and
That's dope.
entrepreneur talks and music in the streets and different kind of stuff. I
Sounds
did a cool thing you like. I did
sounds like a good
poetry.
week.
We had this free trolley that goes around, so I did poetry in motion. So I had like people performing on the trolley,
Oh
when
wow.
people got on.
Wow, that's hot.
Yeah, it's
You got
video
video of that?
on my
No.
YouTube. Yeah, it's
Okay,
on my
all right, you
YouTube.
got video. You're not me.
Uh,
So I would have had no video.
we'll put you. I'll put you on some green screen. I was like
Yeah,
animate you.
yeah.
But so the first year they did it, I just had this idea. I was like, I want to do this like matchmaking creative mixer thing. I was like, I know all these people in film, music. I just want to bring everybody together because I was like, I even did this poem to open it up. I said, yo, y'all are all strangers, but I'm the creative Patty Stanger. Um, so if you don't know Patty Stanger, she had a show called The Millionaire Matchmaker.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Thought
so
that's
I
where
was
you were
just
going with it. Yeah.
so I don't know. I was just excited. I had this. I'm the kind of person when I get ideas, they possess me and they won't let me go. And I'm like, this must be done.
Mm,
Like it just won't leave me alone. So here's me, Mr. quote unquote introvert. I had a spreadsheet. Number one, I don't do spreadsheets. I had a spreadsheet. I had people's emails. I was emailing people like, yo, I got this event. I'm inviting you to the first annual creative mixer. We'd like you to be there, blah, blah, making correspondences. I was trying to find food. I went to this bakery and I was like, can I speak to a manager? And the lady was like, what would you need? And I said, can I speak to the manager?
mm.
And she was like, oh, what do you need? I was like, well, I'm trying to get food donated. I don't know if y'all have any leftover, blah, blah, blah. Like that was terrifying to go into a room, a business and ask for free food.
Right.
But I was like, this mixer must be done and we need some food to make it a full event. So I became this whole other person.
Right.
Emailing, spreadsheet, approaching people, organizing, all words that you probably wouldn't normally associate with me or I wouldn't associate with me. But in that context, it was like, this is what was required or something. Right. So it's like, yeah, so that's what's funny because somebody who saw me like a couple of years later, she was like, I admire your ability to bring people together in the community. So I think people see me as an extrovert because they're like, oh, he's a community organizer. He brings people. I was like, no, I'm a creative organizer. I like creativity.
Absolutely.
And I like the thing that drives me about that mixer is the concept. To me, when I hear what I call like a juicy concept, I'm like, "Ooh, matchmaking and creativity, like those are so strong. It's gonna be so."
Mm.
Like at the thing, I literally had people in groups, and I was doing like the speed dating. I was all right. You're in group one. We're gonna do 30 seconds. Introduce yourself. Go. Like I was literally making it
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
matchmaking event, and then after that, they got to free mingle. But that idea is the driving force for me
Right.
that made me do. So that's why I say social introvert, creative extrovert, because
Yep.
I'm willing to do the things in the creative context that I would never do in the social context.
Mm. You know, one of the TEDs that I was at, they had a dude off at the actually the one I did. The dude was off the side of the stage doing a painting, and to me that felt like a hip hop jam, right? Kind of you talking about sort of mixing the creative arts, right? The multimodal kind of stuff. This dude did a painting, and it was like I don't know what I'd call it, suburban graffiti, maybe. Like
Suburban
it was like
graffiti.
it was crunchy graffiti, maybe. It was something like that, right? And but it was dope. It was really dope. He's on a canvas and he's doing this thing, right? And he was inspired from what everybody was talking about. So needless to say, we're all bought in because we're like, oh, I wonder how my thing is going to contribute to his weirdness. You know, like I'm looking at it before I go on, I'm looking at it after, and I'm like, okay, cool. You know, like that. I just think it's natural you're going to do that. But you're watching the people do their stuff, and I can't help. Like I'm fixated on it. I'm just like watching the guy like the whole time. I'm like kind of listening to you, but I'm like, is this a good idea? Am I the only one who's not paying attention fully to what everybody's saying? So I'm watching this dude paint. Like I'd much rather watch the dude paint than a person talk. But
Right.
if there's a person just talking on their own, I'm cool with it for a certain amount of time. Then I'm off thinking about rhymes, and you know,
Right.
I'm people will say scattered. And it's like I like to say inspired. I'm inspired easily, you know, and I'm on a quest with the creativity to find people that inspire me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very self-inspired, though. Don't get it wrong. Like, don't get it twisted. Like, I'm very self-inspired. Like, I'm like, I know what I want to write about. I know what I want, but I love the process. That
Right.
someone else's process is inspiring to me. It's more when I was talking about Jiro Love Sushi. Same thing. Give me someone's process for how they achieve like mastery in their creative realm. I'm so sucked in. Like I can watch anybody. As if you tell me that you're going to take me to see someone blow glass, I'm there. Like, yo, you're
Right.
going to show me someone blow glass, like or smelt iron or something like that. Like I don't even know anything about that, but just the idea of here, I can go watch a blacksmith. I'm there with bells on. Now I understand that that's not like super popular. So I'm thinking to myself, why don't people do take the blacksmith and put it with like classical music or something? Like let me go watch like a classical musician and or a whole orchestra and then get to see this dude melting. I think that fusion is so dope. And I am the most extroverted person ever when you do that. It's kind of what you're saying. It's like you give me something like that. I mean, I'm not gonna be out like shaking hands and kissing the babies or anything, but I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be excited about it and looking forward to it. Oh, and the last thing I say too, I'm looking forward. Of course, when we're performing, like the performance coming up this weekend, right? Friday, traveling, go do the show. I think I was telling you about it. Yo, the show is so dope, so dope. I mean, it's like everything for me that I'd love to be involved. Let me put this up here too. Support the event with like the 3 people who would possibly be in that world. Let me go to Instagram. Um, let's see. I'm gonna share nothing. I'm not gonna share because I don't have a tab open. This flyer speaks to me on a whole different level. So let's do it the right way. Let me open this. And I have it on my Instagram. I think you've seen it, Bernard. I don't know. It's but if not, I mean, if this wasn't my event, I'd be going to this event. Like, yo, can't wait to go to this. Um, oh, Chica, she's a dope director. She actually did a song for her movie. Um, yeah, look at this event. When you read, let me blow this up. When you read what's in green here, excuse me, music by the Latin jazz band, rap music, spoken word poetry, and rap battles, speakers who discuss their paths and STEM careers, physics, activity booths, and handouts, informal time for students to talk with physicists, free food, physics vans, Star Wars inspired demos, folklorico. I mean, you got Star Wars, you got free food, physics, hip hop, rap battles. I mean, that's what's dope. That
Right.
that pairing to me is so amazing that I would be begging to go to an event like that. And you know what I mean? It's like when I think of what you're talking about, like going out or whatever, I can't wait to go to that event because it's an event that I'd go to as a fan.
Right.
I have other events that I'm in. I'm not even looking forward to it. Like, and I'm in the event, right? And I'm like, oh, I don't even want to like do this event. Like sometimes I truthfully think that because I think of the fanfare and all the kind of stuff, and I'm like, oh. But this, I find myself, and this is dangerous. I find myself looking so forward to it that I just want to skip through the days, and then I start thinking about how valuable the days are, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to Friday, but really I can because I got so much to do on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But I love when I'm looking forward to stuff. But then the I don't know if it's the introvert in me or just the get done stuff person in me. I'm like, oh man, now I got to pack my time. Like I got to really think about all the things that I would be doing instead of fast forwarding to that date. I just don't think we do enough of these kind of events that would bring people out. Because what is it? Half the people maybe are introverts. I don't know. 40%, 30%. Most of us are staying home. Most of us can't be bothered to go out in the public events. But that's how you get us out. Appeal to, I think the Maker Faire thing is kind of like, it's kind of a little trendy to be truthful. I think there's a lot of people like, oh, we got to have our maker space or whatever. And I've been to some that are lame, but I was at one of them. It was at George Mason University. That was incredible. They did that right. I was like, yo, give me a Maker Faire. And to me, that has all the elements that you'd want potentially. I'm going to a Maker Faire. Like I'm going to, if they do that again this year, I'm there. Maybe it's because they had R2D2 and it just really threw me over the top. But throw combining of things that don't usually go together in creative spaces, like poetry on a bus, or or I mean on a, what'd you call it? Wasn't a bus.
Poetry in motion, on a free trolley.
Free trolley, that's the word I was looking for. Even doper. Like what? Like, yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah, something I was thinking about, like, is like the whole threads that we're bringing together in this whole podcast is, that sort of interesting dynamic of the introvert extrovert, well, not introvert extrovert, but the individual who's like, why do I tend to be introverted in this way and extroverted in the other context? So I was thinking about that mixer I did, and it's just like I was like another person. Like I was organizing, I was on stage, I was introducing. I guess part of it is like I knew I was in charge, right? There was like a different kind of confidence, but here's what's interesting. It wasn't performance mode. I guess it kind of was. It wasn't theatrical performance, as in like a poem or acting or music. It was almost like I became another character. This is like this guy who gets to come out in here. So it was like I was acting, but it wasn't fake. I wasn't fake.
Right. I totally get you.
I didn't feel as if I was getting through this. Like I gotta get up here and host and make everyone feel welcome. It was like I wanted to do it. It was like I wanted you all to be a part of my social event, so to speak, that I put together. Now maybe part of it was because like, oh man, I don't typically do this, and it felt good to be different and like engage another kind of energy. But I think there's also a part of it that's like, maybe I'm more extroverted than I let on.
Right. But here's 27 to 31% shocked me.
But here's the other interest. So the drama troupe I mentioned before, we would do these warm-ups. So one of the warm-ups was pick someone who like really annoys you, type of person or a person, and for like the next minute you're going to embody that person in your body. And I was like, oh, I know what I'm doing. So then we just all like walked around and did whatever action that represented that person. So I was like, hey, how are you? How are you doing? How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. How are you doing? How are you? How are you going? How are you doing? You want to talk? Blah, 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 blah. And so then they were like, okay, now what do you notice about yourself when you're done? I was like, so I hate this. It's hard to admit, but I said I felt really energized. Like as much as I didn't want to admit, like there was something quite energizing about like the talking and the walking and engaging. And I was like, oh, maybe I've been missing out on that. So there is something about that, and I said that too. Like Saturdays, I used to sit at home, but then like I just had to go out, and I explained it as like, you know, flowers, they need water, they need sunlight. So even if you don't want to do it, there's just something about you that needs like
Yeah.
the
Totally.
extroversion sunlight, the
Absolutely.
extroversion water to kind of
Yeah, I found myself saying that all the time. I'll say, "Oh, I've just been in the house too long. I just got to go out." You know, now I might just be walking around my block or whatever. And sometimes, yeah, it's like I even try to think. We were talking about this the other day about like buying clothes. Like I've bought like probably $200 of clothes in like 2 years. You know, and that's the recent end. You know, it's like COVID. It's like, where are you going? You know, the sweatpants have been mostly of what I've purchased, and just got to keep that sweatpant game up. It's important. Right? It's the needs to be social on my own terms is high. So yeah, that's why I feel like I'm not the definitive introvert. Neither of us are. I mean, what we do is, and this kind of applies to Bev's comment there. I think she wrote, respectfully, matchmaking creativity has nothing to do with introversion and extroversion. It has to do with goals and purpose. And I think that's generally true. I think that what happens though is that people say this is extrovert world. Like it's the opposite of almost what I'm saying. And that's why
right.
I'm saying it. It's that people will say, oh, well, performers are clearly extroverts and people that do this. And there are a ton of extroverts who are performers. There's no doubt about it. What I'm also saying is that the thing that will get, and I think Bernard is with me on this point, is that the thing that will get us out is creativity. Like
Right.
creativity, a lot of introverts, what we have in common is that because we're spending so much time to ourselves, there's something we're doing with that time. And a lot of times it's creativity. It's not always, but for a lot of us, you like, oh, that poet, I didn't know. Yeah, a lot of poets are introverts. A lot of writers are introverts. Not only, I mean, clearly, Bev's a writer as well. I mean, there are plenty of people who do the traditional extrovert thing and do it well. But I'm just saying the thing that can grab a lot of us out is that very thing that you would think is the extrovert thing only because of how it's positioned in marketing and marketed. Like to perform is to tap into an identity that you actually have. And there's something liberating about the performance aspect. It's hard to put into words. It's kind of what we're fumbling around with as we say it a lot. It's like Bernard used the word identity. It's like a tapping into a different identity. I feel that way every time I'm Professor Lyrical. You know what I mean? It's like, but I've become Professor Lyrical. So,
Right.
you know, I talk about my first job, real jobs, enterprise renting cars. I became the manager of that branch. When I first started, it was just to take cars back and forth to New York. I was pimping that job for all it was worth, said it in the interview. It's why I got hired. They were all business majors who got those jobs. You had to be generally a business major who worked at enterprise. Interview, they're like, yo, you got to put on a suit. You got to be dressed the way that you are, to get the job. I'm like, cool. And they're like, so tell Stan Mann, the president of the Boston Enterprise Rent-A-Car Boston Group at the time. He's like, so tell me why you want to work here. And I've said the story, I wrote it in my book. I'm like, well, I want to take your cars to go to New York every weekend. I'm a rapper, and I'll work really hard for you for the 5 days of the week. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to be rapping in New York, and I had no other way to get there. And the dude was like laughing at the table.
Right.
He's like, what? He's like, you just told the president of Enterprise Rent-A-Car you don't really want the job. You want to take the cars and go to New York for your rap career. I was like, that pretty much sums it up. And he was like, you're hired. He's like, I've never heard such an honest answer. He's like, I know you'll be honest and trustworthy and dependable and blah, blah, blah. And I say that. And then when I get into the job, I actually was slacking a little bit. My manager had to pull me aside at the time, Andrea McNiff, who's now, she's Stan Mann now. She's huge in enterprise. She was amazing. And she would say to me all the time, super extrovert, by the way. And she would pull me over on the side and she'd say, yeah, she's like, you are really, really smart. She's like, you really could do this job really well if you wanted to. She's like, what? Do you even want to be here? She's like, you don't seem to care. People get up, a customer comes in, you're the last one to get up. You have to do a little bit of selling in there. And I've already told you I'm not a seller, right? And she had this talk with me about this. And all of a sudden I became a seller. And here's what I did. When you had to sell the collision damage waiver or upsell people into the car or whatever, I would generally tell them the truth. I said, okay, let me do it my way. Let me do what you're saying. She inspired me. She did. And I did become a manager from her talk. And I went out and I would say this kind of stuff because I have my head down. I'm like, yeah, collision damage waiver is $9.99 or whatever. I'm dating myself. That's what it was back then. Now it's like $24.99 or whatever. And I was like, yeah, you just sign right here if you want it. That was like my pitch. And everyone was like, no, no, like $9.99. Why would I do that? And then I changed it to this, and this was me tapping into my essence. I was like, here's the thing. I don't really believe in the damage waiver that hard, but I do believe in it in certain situations. Like if you have the money and you want peace of mind, and you don't want to have to think about this car that you don't own, that they're going to take your deductible for it. And so it's not like protecting, it's not going to save you for everything, but it is going to say you're going to basically not have to pay your deductible. Why would you want to pay a deductible on a car you don't own? And by the way, your charges are going to go up, right? From every time that you're in an accident in Massachusetts, that's how it works, right? So if you don't want that, then I'd take it. But ultimately, like I personally wouldn't take it unless that appeals to you. Everyone started taking it. It was just like flying off the shelf. It was like, nope, gotta have that, gotta have that, gotta have that. Got it. I tapped like, and people started saying about me who didn't know me. My damage waiver numbers went through the roof. It was like up around 64%, and that's key to being promoted there. And they'd be like, "Plord, yo, wait till you meet him." Like they were selling me as an extrovert, and I'm like, "Have you ever heard my pitch?" They're like, and I was like, "Have you heard what I'm actually out there saying?" And they're like, "No, why don't you break it down?" And people are like, "This is how I sell them. I show them a scratch on the car and I scare them." And I'm like, "Ooh, see, like that's one we'd get you on." Right? And I'm like, I don't do pressure. I don't do this tactics. I'm like, bro, I'm out there saying I wouldn't get it if I were you.
Right.
There's one situation that would work, and if that, I'm basically being truthful with them, and that's it. Now it's a big step up from me looking at my feet and handing the thing and saying, "Please don't have this discussion with me that I don't really want to have." So in this business, the point I'm getting to is in this business world that where everybody was super extrovert and they're upselling and they're wearing their ties and they're fluffy people and they're doing all this kind of stuff. I'm just like straight up, like, hey, I'm just gonna be me because I'm gonna sell me to you. I'm gonna sell me to you all the time. And it's kind of been the North Star for me, like the whole time. Like if I'm on stage, the part of me that I say this all the time, the part of me I want to amplify, the only three things I do well, I'm going to amplify those things and not highlight the rest. And it was kind of like the damage waiver pit. My so-called extrovert speech, I'm going to highlight the one thing I do see in this really well, and that kind of worked. Does that make me an extrovert? No. Does it make me a salesman? No, but for some reason, like, it worked. It worked. Right. I got promoted, and I got to be in this front-facing job again, where the public's coming in every day. The public's coming in every day, and I have to be the person who then is on. And the reason I brought this all up is when we say it changes me. Like I've become Professor Literal. In that job, I became the branch manager. I started to see myself as the manager of this branch. I started talking the way that I kind of now talk, which is much more formal. We talked about that before. I don't talk formal, right? I don't think of myself and all this stuff. And I had to get in that job and go, "Thanks for calling Enterprise. This is Peter." Like my friends would call up and be laughing, like, "Yo, I heard how you answered the phone, man. That's crazy." Like they know the real me, and that's not me. But now, that's kind of me. My wife was saying it the other day. She's like, "The way you talk to your friends is different than you talk to me." I said, "Yeah, I talk to you in my like Nicole voice." And she's like, "What do you mean by that?" And I'm like, "Well, when I met you, I knew that I had to lead with a little bit of that because my wife had she was much more established in her world. She had it on and popping. And I was like, she's like the people I rent cars to. So I need to tap into that part of myself, be a little bit more like look you in the eye, talk to you, you know what I mean? And be like, hey, just be straight up with you, but highlight the best part of me. And that included how I spoke, and it's like, there's something about that, but you become that. So it's like, I feel like I've become part of that extrovert for that moment, and I can tap into it when I need to in certain situations, if that makes sense. That's what I'm doing, and it's still me. Like you said earlier, it's still me, but it's not, it's 30%. That's what you're getting on those tests, 27 to 31%.
Yeah, I think there was one thought I had. I was trying to tie it all together. I'll throw out we're talking about these layers, right? Like hip hop, introvert, artists. So there's all these layers inside of us. And I think you and I are just more aware of the different layers. And so We know how to like leverage them off of one another.
That's a good word.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I think that's what this introverse universe seems to be about. It's like there's all these things inside of you that exist, but are you aware of them, and are you aware of how they interact with one another, and how you can catapult one thing for that? Because I mean, to your point too, is like my natural state, my at resting state is to be quiet. Like in most situations, like I'm not trying to be quiet. I just like when sometimes people are like, oh, why are you so quiet? It's like because I'm literally not doing anything. I'm literally just sitting here in mine. It's like ask somebody, why are you sitting? Like you wouldn't ask somebody why are they sitting, they'd be like, what do you mean? Like why are you sitting now? It's like, what else am I gonna do? So that's how I feel when people ask me that. And it's like I'm not trying to put on a front for you. I'm just being myself. And that just happens to be quiet a lot of the times for whatever reason. Like I don't feel like talking. I don't feel like there's something valuable to input or add. But trust me, there's times when I'm in meetings and people are just going off and I'm like, oh, you need to shut up. You need to shut up. You need to shut up. There's times where I want to say stuff and do stuff. So there's definitely times where I'm like, okay, I need to interject because people just be talking nonsense. I'm like, okay, cut. This person needs to be told this needs to be said that. You need to have that thought rearranged. But okay, so let's talk about that in terms of the extrovertedness. Like going back to my, the matchmaking thing mixer I put together. I think part of what was going on is if you identify mostly with introvertedness, you say, well, this is who I am. So to be extroverted feels foreign. But then also, if you've had trouble with extroverted people, you're like, oh, I don't want to identify with that. I don't want to be like the thing that has caused me so much trouble. So it's hard to see that as a part of yourself, like a true, authentic part of yourself. And that's something I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago. I was like, the question was something like, when someone says, hey, pro, you want to come out? And then you come out. And then after a while, you're like, you know what? Why did I resist this? Like, I like this actually. This is not what I thought it was. I was like, okay, is that being fake? Or is that just like, hey, you never were shown this true version of yourself and allowed to experience it?
This is the question that's why I bring it up. It's like, am I the person who I've become, or did I act my way into that? And I don't 100% know.
So I think I made the distinction. I was like, if you're saying to yourself like, oh, these people asking me, and I know I really don't want to go out right now, and then you go out and you're still like, oh, why did I come out? That was being fake, or that was denying your true self. But if you go out and then after a while, it's like, oh man, like this was way better than I expected. I think that's, you know what? I probably just never gave this part of myself a chance to breathe and be let out. And now that I see it, I'm introduced to me for the first time. It's like, oh, hey, self. So you actually are extroverted? Like, yeah, don't tell too many people, but yeah, I guess I am a little bit more extroverted.
I mean, I started going out more when Google came into Yelp and Google and stuff like that. I have to know the place I'm going to. Like if I've never been there, there is an anxiety. I mean, I'm somebody who's anxious to fly, to do all kinds of stuff, right? And I have that kind of anxiety. You don't know it. My wife knows it. She's like, I can't even deal with you. She's like on the day that we fly, I need you to be up like 4 hours early, But now I'm pretty good. Like, by myself, I'm pretty good. I know that I didn't even know I was like that until she pointed it out, to be honest with you. I had no idea. She was like, dude, you're a complete mess. She's like, and by the way, it was on and popping. I mean, after the whole Twin Towers kind of stuff, like, I mean, dude, I was like, what's the word? The negative word when people are, I was profiling. Oh my gosh. I was profiling anyone who looked shady to me at all. They might've looked like me. And if they had like anything under their coat that looked like it was protruding, I was like, yo, you better have on clean shoes, because I'm thinking like a terrorist wouldn't have clean shoes. I'm like, a terrorist wouldn't care about their shoes, right? So I'm like, yo, this person looks too dingy. Like, you know what I mean? Like because I'm just nervous about flying. I mean, but part of the anxiety is I'm in an airplane with a bunch of people. Like, yes, I don't like heights, with a rational fear of heights, but I don't like going to an airport terminal because there's so many people. I don't like big crowds. I don't like being in a confined area with a bunch of people I don't know. These are things I don't look forward to. But I much rather would be on a bus, and there's reasons why. No one's coming to tend on me. No one's coming to ask me what I want.
Right.
Again, little hang up. And I feel like I can disappear in the bus a little bit more. Like I can get up and go to the bathroom whenever I want. I don't have to wait for the seatbelt sign. Just knowing that I can do that. Just knowing that's a big thing for me. I'd come on the bus when I want. Train, I'm real good with the train.
Right.
Like train, I'm great. Part of it, but I think about, okay, what now I do what you're saying. It's a little bit more of like, okay, is there but I'm saying to myself, a lot of the things are introvert reasons. I'm like, oh, you know why I'm anxious about the plane? Because I'm confined with a bunch of strangers that I don't know, and I have to go to the airport terminal. It's the airport terminal that really bugs me out. I started thinking today about the flight I'm doing Friday. I'm like, oh, like I start thinking about all the things I need to do, and like so that I can minimize my time in the airport terminal, to the point of which I try to be relatively more late than most people would be to the airport terminal because I don't want to be there. And so I'm doing out all the math, and I'm like, what? So I caused myself some issues. But now that I know it, we were talking about this earlier. Now that I know it, and I know how I am, and I know why I am, it's actually helped. And then I can tap into that other part of myself to not outwardly appear that way. I think about myself in work situations. If Bev is still listening, she would know as well. she is. I see comments. It's like, I don't think I come off like that at all. I don't think anybody who knows me at my job would say, boy, he's an introvert. At least I don't think so, because I'm in an area with people that I know, right? Maybe the first week or two that I was there, I'm never good in the first couple of weeks of where I am. I'm figuring out the terrain, and I'm not going down the hall or whatever. But I pop up in everybody's hall. It's part of my job. And I put together the events. I put together a lot of the events. And I was a concert planner and promoter as well, too. I like putting together events. It's not the end all be all thing, but I actually like putting together things that I think will be productive. And I enjoy the moving parts of them and making it happen and bringing people come together. I enjoy going to see the people that I know and that I'm comfortable with. That's like you said, that's the extroverted part of what is in me that is mostly introvert. I'm like, hey, I get to go talk. I can name you the people that I'm excited to go see on a given basis, Bev being one of them too. And, I can think about like, oh, that's going to be cool because I know what they're about. I know they're about something. They're intriguing. And I probably met them in an intimate way. Right. I mean, and that was true of Bev. Like I get to meet her in a very small, group of people, and you get to find out about them. And I think back to the people that I'm closest with. Many of them were in my interview when I interviewed. They were literally in the room they were the people who interviewed me, and I felt a tighter bond to them after a while. And I knew what they were about. We had deep conversation, and that'll get me off and running. But there's people I work with now. I still don't know who they are. I mean, I'm not going and knocking on someone's door no. Like if new people come in and they've not introduced themselves to me and I didn't get the memo or whatever, I'm not the welcome wagon person. I'm not going to go knocking, hey, just wanted to say hi. I can do it, but it doesn't occur to me. But now it occurs to me because I have somebody like my wife telling me, hey, you're a little antisocial. And she's like, by a little, I mean a lot. Like you go sit in the back and you won't talk to anybody. And, you have a new neighbor. You should probably go say hi to them. Have you talked to the neighbors? No, of course not. She's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you should go say hi to the neighbor. Like, you're fine. Once you go, it's going to be fine. She'll be like, you'll be great. You'll be great. You'll be great. Go talk to him.
See, but the way I guess my pushback on that would be how we look at that, because my response, if someone said that to me, I would say, what was it? It goes back to what I was just saying about if you've never been allowed to discover that part of yourself, or that part of yourself has been wounded to where you're like, I hate that part of myself. I don't want to let that part out. Like there's a good reason that you're like, I don't want to do this. It's not like you're just like, I'm just going to do this because it'll be fun. You're just like, nah, there's something genuinely of pain or trauma of something there where it's enough for you to avoid it. So when people are just like, oh, you need to like go be different, I'm like, okay, well, let me say that to you. How about you go into a room and not talk to anybody? Like if you told that to an extrovert, they'd be like, well, why would I do that? It's like, exactly. Like you wouldn't be forced to go against your natural desire, because it's more socially acceptable to be talkative. But if
the movie example, like, I mean, I'm looking at the movies right now. I'm going to see if there's a movie I can see later. I keep saying this. It's part of one of those things I say, I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the movies. I'm not going to the movies. I'm probably going to go to the movies Friday after I'm done the show. Oh, and by the way, they asked me to go out after the show, the people putting it together. I was telling my wife this today. I was like, that I'm dreading that. And she's like, no, of course you are. And I'm like, and I said to her, sitting, and we're in the car, and I'm like, but you know what? I'll probably be fine. I probably need to go hang out with these people. I mean, they're in my same world and everything like that. And I'm like, I probably need to go do it. But in my head, I'm like, I would just like to be by my damn self and let me go to the movies. And here's my thing about the movies, what appeals to me. There's people, like people, love people, don't have to talk to them. No one thinks I'm weird that I don't have to talk to them either. They might think I'm weird that I'm by myself. I get the looks, but I'm like, I don't care. I'm in my glory. When I go to the movies, get my little popcorn, my little drink, sit where I want, look at the right movie, the right time of day. It's about what I want to see. I am not expected to have any conversation with you whatsoever. And I still get to be in your presence. And I feel like I'm out doing something social. That's tapping into the extrovert in me. So the extrovert in me sits alone in the movie theater by himself. And that's tapping into my inner extrovert. So that's what I love about the movies.
I think there's also, I mean, typically when I'm done performing, like I said, I have to think about it. I don't think I've ever performed. I don't think I've really performed and felt like, oh, I need to go rest now. So when you're coming out of your element, it's more like you're energized, right? It's like when you come out of performing or doing your thing, you're like, oh, I could do another workshop. Like, I'm not the kind of person who's like, oh man, we've done 3 TED Talks today. I'm like, well, let's talk again. Let's do another TED Talk. So it's like you're not just coming out of your element. It's like you also have to transition to an entirely different type of element, which is like, now I have to do the thing where I sit down at a table with 3 people. And unless, like I said, unless they're going to ask me questions about, can you tell me more about what you meant when you said that earlier in the thing? You're like, oh, now they're going to get into my life and stuff. Here's the other deeper part. It's not like they're just going to ask you questions that are just about like, so, what do you do on the weekends? Like, they're going to ask you these questions and you're thinking to yourself, like, are we going to become friends now though? Like, are we on the process to becoming friends? Because if you're asking me things about my life, family, where I grew up, that signals to me that you want to know me as a friend, right? Like we talked about the first episode. This is the friendship zone. Now you're starting up a conversation that has implications to me of commitment. I'm giving you information about myself. I'm thinking you really care. I'm thinking you want to know me and know stuff about me, and you're going to keep up, but you're probably not. You're just making talk to talk. So if it's not purposeful talk, then that's why I start to feel drained, because I feel like you're getting something out of the conversation, but I'm not. I'm like the battery there for you to feel like, oh, this person is someone who I can engage with. Because I've heard people say stuff like, oh, even if the person's just in the room in their sleep, like there's something about someone being in the room. So some people literally just want people around, like just around. Like no, there's some people I've thought they're like just having people around is a lot for them. Like it gives them some kind of energy, and not like I was talking earlier, like where I say go into the coffee shop. It's like for the like social aspect. Like there's some energy that they draw off having your presence there.
Yeah, I don't want to live, like I said, in a remote area. I want it to feel lived in and hop in. But I think that's the nurture nature thing too. I just think that was, the way I was raised. And then, I moved to a suburb later, and I always felt discontent. I always felt I was dying to run back to the city. Was dying, moved back. First thing I knew. I cried when we moved out of Lowell and into Chelmsford. Cried. And I was like, I'm going to buy this house when I move back. A lot of kids do that, right? I'm going to buy this house. But it was like, I was saying to my parents, I'm like, look at all the trees. And it's funny, another dude I know said the same thing about that area. And it's just where you're raised has a lot to do with it too. So I know it's not all 100%. And that's not internal. That's just what you're used to when you're young. So to this day, I want to be around people. I want to be around environments that have, I look at a place, and as soon as I come in, I'm like, yeah, that looks way too country for me. Like I'm not country, like I can't do that. My wife, she's from a little bit more of that. Now she's not country, but her dad is country. I mean, it's from Colonial Beach. I mean, they're like the boyhood home of George Washington. Like it's like one store for like 5 miles, and they had a farm, and they had 11 kids, and they pretty much had everything. They made that one trip once or whenever, and everything else was self-sufficient. I'm like, I get nervous about that. If there's not like a store nearby or something, I'm like, that sounds extroverted. You know what I mean? But you kind of want what you know as well. So there's a lot that investigating the whole nurture nature thing. I think that's a huge piece of it, and that's what a lot of these behavioral things get into too. Undergirding them, it's really talking about what is learned and what is in you. And I tend to lean towards just in terms of the science I've done in my life, that the
Right.
genetic portion doesn't have as much to do as the non-genetic.
Right.
Um, it's yesterday, the team that I went to go watch in basketball, they lost due to the genetic part. They just didn't have anybody
Right.
over 6'4". I mean, you know what I mean? Like, the other team was better basketball team.
Right.
They won by 15 or something like that, but they also had two dudes who were like 6'6".
All right.
You
Real
know?
quick, I think you left the clubhouse somehow.
Oh, sure.
Somehow it's only me.
Maybe it booted me for. Oh, you know what? Might have been my phone died. Oops. Sorry. Well, tell all the people I apologize. My phone just tried.
Clubhouse Pro he's trying to get back in the
All the
clubhouse.
masses of amounts of people in Clubhouse that we don't talk to.
If you're in the
And we really neglect our Clubhouse people. We really do.
I mean, it
I
is
see those
introverted
people in there dying to
podcast.
come up and speak, and we're like, "Yo, I see you down there, but you're not going to hear our music. We're not talking to you." And no, we are talking to you. It's just
For the few seconds y'all missed on Clubhouse, Pro was saying he associates the introvert extrovert more with nurture than nature, I think,
that's
rather
exactly what you're
than
saying.
genetics. So as we're waiting for him to come back on,
It's still on 0%.
all right, well,
I'll feed it to you. It'll be like, the nurture is more important than the nature. The nurture is more important because a lot more of your life is in the nurture zone. The nature zone is a very fraction of your life. I mean, you're only in the gestation
I
period.
gotta put my headphone to the microphone. I don't know if that'll work.
We talk about when babies come out, what their personality is like. What do we really know about that, right? We don't know if they had the umbilical cord around the neck like my son did when he was born. We don't know what life was like in there. I'm assuming it was traumatic. Some people say that's why you don't remember anything when you're 2 and before, because it was too traumatic. If you would have had memory of when you were in the 9 months inside your mom, you wouldn't want to know. You know what I'm saying? Like, can you imagine that if you had a memory of that? So, I mean, we give a lot of credit to the disposition of people, but the disposition is largely from once you come out. It would just be my anecdotal kind of belief and evidence. Would be like, you see somebody, the environment you're raised in, the parents you have. We see every single study that's out there, it largely says what your parents do, so will you. You want your kids to read? Have books in the house. Have your parents
Right.
be reading books. You want to be good at math? Have your parents not saying, boy, I'm terrible at math. I say this to faculty all the time. Don't use deficit language. Don't use
Right.
deficit language if you want something to actually be different than you are. Don't share your fear in a way that's going to inhibit them from wanting to actually take it on, because they're like, oh, dad's afraid of that, I must be too, because we buy into all this genetic stuff more heavily than we need to. Yeah, your genetics are largely going to determine if you're 6'6" or not. But you know what? How much sleep and right nutrition you get also plays a large role too. I'm 6'3" plus. My wife is 5'7". My son is 4'9", and he's 8 years old. I'm sure most of that is genetic at this point. There's going to be a portion that comes into it too that's going to have a lot to do about how well rested he is, anything else like that. I get height. I get general kind of stuff. But outside of that, did Steph Curry make it because he has his dad's genes to become the greatest three-point shooter? Wow, his dad's a great three-point shooter. He just got that in the genes. He was also in the gym every single day and had access to world-class facilities. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we got to really break that stuff down, and we need to turn it into a paper is what we need to do, Bernard.
Well, I'll save this for another episode, but just as the chapter heading, I mean, I definitely think all the things that we are God given. So to talk about introvert, extrovert,
everything that there is. I mean, you say
yeah.
everything that we are, everything that there is. You can
Right.
go with that.
So on a spiritual level, I mean, because when I talk about introvert and extrovert, I've really redefined it. Like most people, when they hear introvert, extrovert, they think Myers-Briggs. It's like, but I have a whole different understanding of introvert, extrovert on a universal level, which I won't get into now, but I think I mean, because even we were talking, I mean, think about it. You're in the womb. It's a very introverted life, right?
Sure is.
You're in a sort of vacuum for a while. It's like, hey, let me just stay in here.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's like, okay, but where I'm going with it is I'm saying this, like, none of us know the inner workings of what God is trying to determine in our lives for us, right? We don't have this knowledge. We don't, like, is God in the introvert extrovert market? Like, to me, that seems comical. Like, like, God doesn't care if I'm an introvert or an extrovert. God's given me my life to go figure it out for myself. I'm like, God's going, you know what? I'm going to make that plurd guy. I'm going to make him an introvert. Ha ha ha. Got him. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, I mean, if you start with introvert as a negative, then yeah, but
well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying whatever way it is, like, hooked them up, right? I made him an introvert. Whatever you want to do, it's just like, to me, it's there's no even remote kind of reason that seems like that would be something that God would be in the business of doing. Like, it's a very human thing when we say introvert and extrovert. To me, it's a very reaction based thing to the world that you're in, more so than it is like, oh, you have to overcome your introvertness. I have to overcome it because it happened through my life. Like, I can pinpoint a lot of the events I think that have led me into introvertness fairly acutely, when I take that inventory, and what I wouldn't shut up when I was from 0 to 7. My parents could not stop me from talking. Now, one of the things they said is, will you shut up and will you stop talking? I mean, so after a while, there's that nature part of it. Was it I came out the womb, couldn't shut up, but then you're told, will you shut up? What are you going to do after a while? You know what I mean? And then you're an only child. And then it's like, that's my parents doing, like, that lent a lot, I think, to my introvertedness. And,
right. Well, I guess I would make the distinction. I'm speaking of the idea of, okay, I always bring everything we talked about objective truth on Friday, so I would bring it back to the idea of objective truth. I think everybody on the planet is an expression of some ideal that God wanted. So you can call it introvert, extrovert, male, female, whatever it is, whatever name we've given it to, it doesn't change like what they are on a fundamental level. And so
what you're saying, what your true essence is.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, the example I always go to is like in the New Testament, it talks about the body of Christ. It's like one person is the hand, one person is the foot, like everybody is a thing, and the body needs itself. So the body needs eye, it needs a foot. The hand can't say, I don't need you foot. Like, we're all part of this human race. So I would say introvertedness and extrovertedness are similar, and it's like, hey, there's some dimension of God that is introverted, and some dimension of God that is extroverted, and we are all expressions of that. And so some of us represent one more close to the essence than the other. Like I said, for me, I mean, you could say nurture nature. I can't really obviously relive my life and, figure it out, but I don't think there's a part of me that's just extroverted, like the test.
To the 10th fold.
Yeah, like on the test.
You're not going to get a 99.
Is your phone back on? Can I put the speaker down?
Oh, sorry, I didn't jump into the room, but maybe it automatically did.
Because right now we're going headphones to Clubhouse.
I got used to you like that. I was like, hey,
we'll see how that audio turned out. Oh, well, I guess I'm the only one talking now. So, like I said, I think for me, you could say, oh well, like I think a lot of here's the problem. I think this is why I'm always talking about philosophy and theology. A lot of people only approach things from a scientific lens, so they have this science-driven mentality only. So they're, okay, you're back. So they're gonna have obviously the science parameters around it, whereas I see it as the introvert extrovertedness. I think speaks to like.
Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry.
Okay. I think, yeah, it's much bigger than just a personality test, right? Like, I think,
yeah,
it's not limited to a Myers-Briggs or a scientific explanation, because as we said, these things change from context to context. And And so for
I mean, I
me,
could easily walk in and take the Myers-Briggs and score the highest for extrovert possible if I wanted to, because I'm aware of what the test is doing.
right.
You know,
You have free will to do so.
yes, but I'm choosing to be truthful, you know, and I take it.
But I guess I take it back to like the body analogy. Like as much as a hand wants to be a foot, it's just not, right? It can do some foot-like things. It can do what the foot tries to do, but it's always going to fail at being a foot. So I think on some senses, there's things that introvertedness just is and has a strength of doing. Some things extroverted just is and has a strength of doing. And I think we are representations of that in the earth, that both of these things are good. You know, both of these things are needed.
Yeah.
And then they get contorted through humans, science. They get contorted through how, like you say, experiences. But they were, I think, in their original, truest, ideal state, they just are true and they exist.
I can see that. I would think that if that's the case, that there are plenty of introverts and extroverts who are not living that life of what they were assigned for. Because, like, in other words, if it was assigned for, if we want to take it to that level, if we think that someone said, you know, okay, when you were 6, you had this happen. I went back, I looked at it, and now I can compare it to how you act, and I see that this was the divergent place off of the bridge. For instance, we take it to the extreme. Think of somebody who's been in captivity for their whole life, right? Especially extreme, like when they're kidnapped by like a sexual predator or something like that, and they live in the basement, right? They're going to come out as extrovert, I mean, as introvert as you can humanly imagine, right? To the point where they don't even want to see light, you know, and they're scared of every human or whatever. And clearly there's a level that can influence you to be what you weren't. You could have been an incredible extrovert going into it, and you're going to be introvert your whole life. What I'm saying is we kind of don't know. You know, it's like, unless we were able to have somebody there standing and chalk it all up, I mean, who knows? I might have been, you know, my fate may have been to be the greatest extrovert of all time, and maybe I'm on the path towards it. You know, maybe us doing this show right now, we're going to change us into the greatest extroverts who've ever lived, you know? And, but there's been a numerous things that have lined up that I can see. And then I can see, I can see a couple that would be for the extrovert side too. I can say, hey, yep, major rapper, right? And that's, you're doing that teaching thing. You're in front of the stage. You're doing a live stream right now. You know, you now have inflection in your voice that you didn't have until you were in your 20s. You know, like that to me is such a huge one. You know, you can speak in different tones and read. I had it though. I could read books when I was a kid and do it with that. But when it was back to me speaking, I spoke like monotone. You know, and it's like, what was that? Because I was made fun of when I was a kid.
Right. Well, yeah, that's why that's
into
why
the shell, to use your other thing. You know?
Well, that's why I always talk about identity, and I talk about things like shame, because I think the only reason we view things the way we do is through, like you say, experiences and wounds. So, like, if you could wipe away your life and all the negative experiences, you wouldn't think of introverted, extrovert even as a thing.
Absolutely.
They would just be like, oh, those are reality, right? Like they're just they are. Yeah. But it's not until they become identified and then demeaned or demonized.
Connotations take place. Yep.
You start to put a judgment on the extrovert. Oh, you were extroverted against me. Now I hate that. Or
and I do judge the extroverts harshly.
But we judge ourselves too, because we're like, I shouldn't be so quiet. I should be talking right now. Or I should, like, you're gonna hate the thing that judged you, and then you're also simultaneously judging yourself or self-rejecting yourself.
Yeah.
So now, like, the whole introvert extrovert thing becomes, it's like you're too aware, right? Like you're too aware that they're things. I think that's kind of like, you know, the Adam and Eve is like, now that you're aware, you're like, oh, we're naked. Now we know we're naked. Oh, gotta cover this up. That's the shame. That's what they say. They were naked and ashamed before they were naked and unashamed.
Right.
So it's like
naked and unabashed.
So now when you rip off the like the cloak, the positive cloak, so to speak, you become too hyper aware of introvertedness, extrovertedness, and you enter into each situation like, okay, I'm going to the business meeting. Time to turn on my extroversion.
I kind of feel that I do that.
And we all do that. And I've hated phone voice. There's something as a little kid. Hi, my name is Bernard here.
That's what I'm
So
telling
I
you.
need a refill on my prescription. Yes,
Yes,
thank you. My name is
yes,
yes. My
yes,
my number is warm14. Like I hate phone voice,
yes.
but
My
I know
phones
I
would
have to
call
do
me to
phone.
hear phone voice. They would be like, "Yo, this is hilarious."
But what we have all know we have to do phone voice in order to sound like we're on the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, or professional or whatever.
This
And
kills me. This kills me though when people do this. Did we talk about this before? When people are like, or you get into a hip hop room and everybody suddenly is, "Yo, son," it's like
you
suddenly
should.
everyone's a gangster in the hip hop room because it's promoted as hip hop, right? And I'm like, bro, talk like how you talk. And then I get caught up going, okay, how do I talk? Because I sounded like I mean, you take me and my wife in our relationship.
Right.
She's not going to say this, but I'll say it for her. She would say I sound like the gully moron of the two of us. I
The
get that,
gully
right?
more.
But I do, right? And so, but now I don't exactly talk like that. And at which point does the acting start to take up the phone voice? I did
Right.
phone voice for 3 years at that job. And guess what? I came out talking more like that.
Right.
So now it's not a stretch for me. I can do the code switch thing
Right.
extremely easy. I didn't have the ability to code switch for a long time or at a level that I thought I did. I tell this people all the time, I was going into jobs, interviewing for jobs out of school. And like the first 5 that I got were like, nope, sorry, nope. I was like, what? What are you crazy? How can you not hire me? And I'm thinking about what I looked like in those interviews, and I'm
Right.
thinking about what I sounded like. And I say all the time, I didn't know. My wife corrected me 2 times yesterday on stuff I said the wrong thing. She's like, oh, that was ran, not run. She can't help herself, because she came up in a family like that where her dad
Right.
corrected her all day. I didn't, but now with practice, I'm like 88%. I'm like 88% can speak academically. See, I did it. And it's like, I remember talking on a stage. I'll never forget this. I was talking on a stage, and I should have said I have spoken at many different institutions. I was like, yeah, I've spoken so many different, and like I'm talking about being an expert speaker, and I'm like, I've spoke, and my default is to say spoke all the time.
Right.
But what happens is the inhibition for me goes away when you're around your
Right.
friends. It's the reality comes out. My wife goes, "You talk to your friends differently than you talk to me," and I'm like, "Well, you talk to your family with a Southern accent when you're in VA." Like, so at what point did you lose the VA accent and now it can turn back on? So these questions are huge. But to the hip hop one, when we in the hip hop rooms in Clubhouse and everybody's in there and they're talking and they're posturing and posing, the thing that I won't let fly, and I'll challenge this for audiences too when I'm speaking and people are talking about, yeah, but I listen to this kind of hip hop and I do this kind of hip hop because that's what's popping right now, whatever. And I'm like, true. However, you can't tell me that you can't curse in a track because that's how you talk.
Right.
You're lying to yourself.
Right.
You
Right.
can't because you don't want to, because
Right.
you're used to talking like that
Right.
and you get away with it. If God's watching you, your mom, your grandmother, or your son, right? Maybe those would influence you a little different. And guess what? Probably more than one of them is watching at all times, right? And it's like, or most times. And you can do it then. But when you get into the clubhouse room and replay is not on, it's like, yo, what? And I've done it too. I've slipped up and been like, I get too comfortable. And, all of a sudden I'm using like, and the reason I don't want to use them is because I'm really not trying to offend other people with my speech. I
Right.
may try to prompt you into action and think about something, but I don't need to do it through the cheap junk food of
Right.
by just dropping curses. What would my grandmother think? What would you know what I mean? I love my grandmother more than anybody alive, and it's like, she may have talked like a potty mouth, but never in front of me. She
Right.
didn't talk like that in front of me. And it's like, I respect my grandmother, so I'm going to talk like that. And so when I slip up, I'm not using the cop out of like, oh, I can't do it. I just made a mistake. I got to think about it. But if you think about it hard, I've never cursed at a 12-year-old when I've spoken at a school event ever.
Right.
It would never dawn on me to go, yo, what the, like, no, you do it when you feel like
Right.
you feel the social cues are in place. And it's to your point of the extroversion and introversion. You get into the point of where you're like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be more extroverted. And this is where I'm
Right.
supposed to be more introverted. And then it's which is fake, which is, I don't know if fake's the right word, but when are you slightly more acting than being you? I say this all the time. I don't even authentically know with the voice thing and the phone voice, like where I actually fall on the pendulum anymore. Like the
Right.
true centered me. I'm like, I don't know.
Well,
It's hard to say.
Well, I was going to take it to that. Authenticity was the word that's been coming up for me. And new term, instead of code switching, we have mode switching, right? Like we're going
like
from
that.
one
Can't stand saying
introversion.
code switching. So that's good. I'm gonna coin that. I'll be like, I wrote mode switching. Everybody, let it be known. The record said Pro came up with mode switching on 525.
Well, I'm not even talking
a moment
about.
after Bernard did. By the way.
I'm not even. I'm not even talking about for just the language. I'm saying like you go into the business meeting. It's like your code follows your mode, right? You're like, oh, I'm going into the business meeting, so my mode must be staccato speech because this is the place where we speak. So you're not even just thinking about how you're going to speak. It's like your speech just follows the mindset that you're in.
Yep.
This is a business oriented meeting. So I can, yo, what's up, y'all? You know what I'm saying? So here go the graphs right here. You know what I'm saying? These graphs, because that's seen as a joke, right? Like when people doing a sitcom, you know what I'm saying? Snoop Dogg, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, well, shorty, yo, the graphs is coming up. I mean, there's all types of racial, cultural stuff graph, too.
Homie. Yeah.
But without even getting into racial or cultural, just the pure idea of there is one type of speech for this, there is one type of speech for that. You know, when you're around your friends, you can be a little more loose with your ings and jings, and you know, I can say like in and bike in, but with my teacher, I have to say liking. I have to be proper English.
That's a lot of pressure.
So the mode switch, I think, that is the problem. Like we feel like we have to conform to these modes, and that brings all the problems. Like if you're, like I said, if you're an introvert in a meeting, you should be not allowed. The freedom for everybody should be there to be what they are, because that's a strength. It's not a weakness.
We'll just think what we do though. We go around the table,
right?
And that's the weirdest point for me. I'm looking at the people, and I feel like I'm on fire as the thing's coming close to me, and I'm like, oh, dude. And then someone before you sets the tone of now you need to say your formal title, your formal thing. And I was just gonna say, hey, I teach math and I do faculty development. That's usually my default. Like I teach math, but then someone will say the title after. Now I'm in the used to, because of where we are. It's pretty formal. So I'm like, I'm an associate professor of mathematics and I do faculty development for the university. And if someone then goes into degrees, and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm like, can I just say, hey, it's great to be here. Appreciate getting to hear you. You know, my name is Dr. Ford.
I'm Bernard. I try to keep stuff brief. I'm Bernard. I teach music. Next, because like, what else do you need to know? Like, again, we're not actually getting to know each other in this.
That's how we're hanging out because of the intro.
So you're like this. I did this, man. This is all I'm always talking about, breaking fear, and I wish I had even more fear breaking than this. But so this wasn't a formal meeting. This was this thing that has started in town, which was like these 8 a.m. Idea meetups, and it was like, hey, do you have an idea? And come talk about it, and share resources, share whatever. So there was one meeting where I was want to talk about like one of the things you see on my website is Cypher Tank, where we rap and freestyle about brand names. And so I had it planned, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. So like, okay, Bernard, your idea. So I was like, yo, I said we want to start a type of hyper kind of event where we freestyle. Like I just started rapping because like, yo, we should be able to rap
it
to introduce things, especially if I'm talking about rap. And it's like, everybody went, oh, like everybody woke up too, because they were all like, and then like, oh, what's happened? It's so funny. I did that at the mixer too. The second mixer. Everybody started mingling, and I was like, no, we had a planned thing. These people to take you through how to meet each other, and so everybody was just talking, wouldn't listen to me, and then I went into a poem, and everybody. Something about the staccato rhythm that everybody like, well, what? He's not talking normally. The sentences are spread apart.
Yep.
So like I said, the introvertedness is not a weakness, but since it is portrayed as a weakness, you feel like when you go into like a meeting context, oh, I have to not be silent. I have to overcome the silence to talk versus what like I love what Susan Cain talks about in her book. She said she started to see that her silence and her quiet was her power.
Her weapon,
her opening story just talks about how she was able to negotiate, whereas other people were hot-headed, and the deal would have been blown. And then her boss was like, "Wait a minute, hold on, you just saved the deal. We need to look into this type of mode." So yeah, when we have these frames that we like the man-made frames of like what is introvert, extrovert, that's when the problems start. But I think at their essence, they are true, and that's why I was getting back with the authenticity. It's like when you go out and someone says like, hey, didn't you have a good time? You're like, actually I did. It's like maybe that was authentically you, but you've only experienced that authentic you once, right? So now you're like, man, I did like that, but I told myself I hated that. So am I gonna trust the old me
Mm,
who has hated that for 30 years, or
right.
am I gonna trust the new me who I've experienced one time,
One time.
one
Yeah.
thing of
Yeah.
goodness?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, well, last thing I'll say is I think to the authenticity part,
Mm,
it's to me the thing that leads everything is like I said, identity and authenticity should be the core that's going into every one of these situations.
right.
Because as I said to the mixer, for me, I was being true to myself with that mixer. I wasn't being a fake extrovert
But
or
this is the problem with the authenticity, though, is that the authentic me. I mean, we talked about the last time. This is the authentic me. You know what I'm saying? Like this doesn't resonate well in the business space. Except on
right,
Wednesdays when it's Spirit Day and we can wear the sweatpants suits.
right,
But it's. I mean, it's the intro of that same poem I do, like the What Inspires You. I get into it in the third, fourth, fifth line. I'm like the snapback and the t-shirt or the sport coat and the sweater. Sometimes we let our voices in our head become our bosses that tell us how to dress and think and act inside our office. Point I hope I'm making is this bondage can be mental, and it trickles down to rappers choosing words on instrumentals. We act like we're compelled to follow rules and make decisions based on policies and codes that oftentimes are never written, just to fit inside a mold that we have cast
yep,
upon ourselves in this cookie cutter template that we bury on our shelves, burying our souls inside a shell of our true selves that we rarely show to others for a fear of losing wealth, a fear of losing safety from exposing who we are. So a Superman stays hidden, all we give him is our Clark. Blah blah blah. I mean, that whole is a day-to-day choice for me when I'm putting on my clothes. I say, well,
right,
when I put my chain upon the dresser, will I reach for something boring or them Jordans that are fresher? You
right,
know, I mean, every day I want to throw on the Jordans and the whatever it is. It's like not every day, but I work a job that's relatively formal. That and I can dress like I don't have any dress. I get the general aesthetic of like what looks good in the business place for me. I understand what that is. And I also get that as I've matured about this in life, I also get that my natural inclination of what I think looks good when I'm just being me doesn't always need to be the stereotypical view of what you think that is at a hip hop show. Though sometimes I'm just really in that mood and I fight against it. I'm like, oh, I want to give him the grown and sexy pro, or as
right.
grown and sexy as I can possibly be. And because of the mood and the vibe and the aesthetics do matter to me. Like I'm not like but I'll say this. This is where I was going with it off when you were saying stuff. It made me think about this. This is kind of deep. We were thinking about like who runs companies and runs meetings well or whatever. Every person I've ever had, my slant is that a woman, first of all, has been all of my best bosses. Actually, one of my worst also was a woman too. But I had all of my best bosses, bar none, have been extroverted women. And they have gotten something out of me that I probably couldn't have got out of myself. That's very true. And I was just thinking about it while you were speaking. But it's also true of the women in my life. I was just saying, I've had one introverted girlfriend, and every other woman, for the most part, has been an extrovert, a like over the top extrovert. And I said some of that was by necessity because I wouldn't have bothered to go over.
Right.
It's like I needed them to come and grab me off the wall, to go back to a wallflower thing. And I wonder if the two have something to do with each other. Now that I think about it, I'm like, am I attracted to that? Because in my subconscious memory, I know that those women have steered our ship correctly and actually pulled out of me what I couldn't pull out myself. So it's an interesting caveat to that sort of whole discussion. And I wrestle with it every day I go in. I'm like, yo, I want to be me. I want to be
Right.
me. I want to be me. I want to be me. And then when I'm at those jobs that I have a great, like, kind of leadership or whatever too, they kind of get that. They're like, yo, be you, be the authentic you, but I need you to be invested in this, and
Right.
I respond to that pretty well. There's other stuff too, but it's just an interesting thought.
Well, here, okay. There's this is why we're doing episodes, multiple episodes,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I know.
um,
We gotta wrap it too soon. I'm
all
way
right.
over. My son's gonna be like, "Daddy, you said you were coming. It's 5:30." But we got
Um,
episodes on deck.
so to your last point, um, okay, so I was saying, yeah, like when I was doing that mixer, I was being my authentic self because I was doing what I wanted to do.
Right.
And even though I was butting up against this, like, but I'm not this person, that didn't change that was the true me. It's just like
Hmm.
it says like it was an introduction, like, hey, true you, meet the real true you that you didn't talk
In
to.
that moment too.
So it was just awkward. It was just like, oh, hey, you do this?
Who's
Yeah, I
this
do
Bernard?
this.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, right.
So that's one. I think also, I mean, you said this is my authentic me, but to me, I was like, that doesn't change that it's authentic you. Like the but saying like, but I have to do this at work. Like to me, that's all the fake stuff that humans have
Yeah,
created. Like
right.
those
Absolutely.
things are in opposition to who you are. And so you wrestle with the like, but this is who I am, but this is what I feel like I have to do in order to survive kind of
Yep.
thing. All right.
Yep.
So I mean that's a whole nother conversation. But okay, this is what I think about. I was telling Saki this last week. I don't think you were on the call still, but I was saying to me the only way that I could do something that was like quote unquote the unauthentic me was if I knew my true identity. So in context, she was talking about writing these grants and how she feels like, oh, you have to say the certain things in order for people to accept the grant.
Right.
And I was like, I can't do, like, I couldn't write those words.
Can't
I would
stand
just be
writing
like,
grants for no reason.
y'all don't know what y'all talking about. This is the wrong. That's what I would be like. I would be the grant writer who wouldn't get grants because I'd be like, y'all have no idea what you're talking about.
Yep.
So I was like, the only way I could do that is to be if I had a secure identity that was not tied to that grant, not tied to my work, it has to be totally detached.
Totally free.
And that's very much the Christian ideal. It's like, okay, the only reason Christ can come to earth because he's like, yeah, I know I'm God. Like I literally am totally secure in my identity. So I can become a human being and I can become sin and do, talk to people. He's like, because I know who I am. Like, I'm just putting.
That's why you can hang with the sinners and hang with the tax collectors.
Yeah, because he's like I said, you put on your identity, you put on these identities like a
I'm
coat.
good. I got a force field. Right.
Right. Yeah. And so I have to, I tell myself this too, because it's hard. Like I love hip hop, I love music, but I have to even say to myself, it's like, even though I said earlier, I am music, but like, is my true essence music? You know what I'm saying? Like, no, or am I Bernard?
Right.
Like the true identity is I am Bernard, child of God, period. Everything after that. Huh?
I get to the fact though that music, it's interesting because music has led most artists to something else. And
right.
You like, think of all the most successful rappers in the world, they all do something else. But you wouldn't have known about them if it wasn't through the music. And
right.
That's double-headed coin because there's not as much money as there is in the music as there is in acting, for instance. So LL Cool J is still say his name because he's acting, right? Few exceptions. I mean, Jay-Z, even all the business kind of stuff has really surpassed this day and age, has replaced sort of the rapper Jay-Z, but immensely talented human being who can kind of break the rules, and it's like, but for most people, when you're looking at it, like name any rapper who's relevant that's been relevant for 30 years, they act. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like Common is still here because Common acts. Queen Latifah is still here because Queen. I mean, we go on and on. Method Man is still, it's like
right. So yeah, so the point I was going to go to was, if I would challenge everybody to come up with like a hierarchy of your identity, like who would you say is the top of your pyramid, and what are these other identities like flow out of it? Because I can make an argument, even though I don't necessarily want to make this argument. Like you could say, oh, I struggle with the hip hop attire at work, but you're also a father who's like, but I love my son a lot, so therefore, in order to provide for him, I do these other things that make me feel uncomfortable.
Yep.
So my identity is not really in the hip hop me or the clothes me. There's like another identity that supersedes that identity. But even, huh?
No. Say it.
But even that identity, you could go even further because it's like, well, at one point you weren't a father, right? You were just pro.
Right.
So I always challenge everybody to consider the philosophical, theological question of who am I first, period. Like if you were born in a vacuum, you would have to ask that question, because once you put on the doctor's coat, even the good identities, oh, my son's a doctor. Okay, whatever, your son can't be a doctor anymore.
Right.
Or this doctor is better than you. Like there's always going to be there's always going to be some other identity that challenges it, even your own. Oh man, I used to be so good. I used to be an actor. Everybody used to love me for rapping. Now they want me to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to be that. That's corny. Right? Like I used to be spitting bars. Now I'm like, I mean, look at Raekwon. He got like a juice shop now. Like you think Raekwon would have had a juicer shop? Nope. And he probably thinking at that age when he was, out there doing what he was doing, like, yo, I ain't selling no juice. I got the juice, right? I ain't selling the juice. The authenticity, it's almost like identity produces authenticity, right? Your identity is the main thing, and then your authenticity comes out of that. But that authenticity can be different things at different times. I think the main thing is, like I said, to find
Absolutely.
the core you, the core who are you all the time? Who do you take
Yep.
into every situation? Because if you don't know that, then you're always going to come up against that, like, but I don't really feel like I'm being true to me.
I
It's like, well,
I
you got to
say
answer
this.
the question, who is the true to me?
That's right. I say the same thing, or very similar in my book. I say that you'll hear me say this analogy a lot because I go into the statistics nerd and standard deviation and so forth. And I'm like, okay, if we're looking at the bell curve, I know the center me. I'm very aware of who that person is. And I'm also aware that I can be one standard deviation out on either side, and that's not going to lose people. It's when I go two plus sigma is when I start to lose people, right? So it's because that seems like if you saw me at -2 and then you saw me at +2, it seems like two different human beings. The truth is, we can go 3 sigma on either side. We really can. I mean, we can go out the 3 sigma on either side, but
Right.
they lose people. Like, truth be told, if I'm thinking of like what really makes me happy in terms of life, it's creating poetry.
Right.
However, the same person who you think is a he's a dope poet, right? I'm also a sick mathematician, right? And they
Right.
don't seem to have anything to do with these. And from those are like 2 sigma apart. I should say more than that because we're going to count the middle. But I'm like, plus and -2, and it's like, yeah, but watch me put them together because the true me involves both of them. And so when I flex to this side or this side, it's not that bad because I'm incorporate. You'll hear the math sometimes in the poetry. You'll see the appreciation for poetry in the mathematics. And so this idea of the true center of knowing who you are, I say go plus or minus 5 degrees,
Right.
especially when you rap as a performer. That's stretching yourself. You can lose it though when people really lose their core. They lose their core audience a lot of times because they're trying to do this. Is what I say against trend prevention. It's like, dude, I listen to some songs with audio too, and I go, yo, that's dope. That's really dope. It's probably not for me, but that's dope.
Right. Right.
Maybe 3% on my voice when you don't really notice it, just because I wanted to do what I'm going to do. I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? But like that's staying within the parameters. I want to show you this one thing too. You're talking about it's interesting. This is very personal to me, but I'll share it. It's with my son here. So I wrote my son an email the other day. Looks like March 9th, and I said my son is, and I wrote kind, creative, intelligent, empathetic, curious, happy, snuggly, fun, talented, and beautiful. And the last one, at 9, I paused. And I was like, what's the 10th thing? I mean, I should just do 10. Just seemed right, right?
Right.
And just all the physical stuff about him, I was starting to think. And I was like, he's so handsome. He's such a beautiful boy. And it was like, none of those come to mind when I'm thinking about him. It's just an interesting thing that, I mean, honestly, my son is very like handsome. You know what I mean? It's like people stop him all the time, like, oh my gosh. And he knows it. He's very aware of it. But none of those things rush to my mind. He wrote, you're also squishy on the bottom of your plan. He's squishing my face. I think about that stuff and I'm like, okay, this is my list of what he is. And I think about on any given day how, some of those words are very similar to each other. But, you think about like beautiful and curious. It's like, okay, those are different. We think about our package of things that we bring to the table,
Right.
and most of this stuff is stuff that I'm drawn to anyways, that I love about him. I just love that he's kind. He's so curious. He's so empathetic. The first thing he'll say is, Mommy, are you okay? I just want to make sure you're okay. He's been saying that since he came out the womb. I mean, this boy is like so empathetic, more so than me. I'm like, who is this kid? Like, I wish I had the language he does. His empathy
Right.
language is crazy, I mean, you start thinking about like the different things we have. And if to your point, it's like make a list. And it made me think of this. And I was like, if I had to do that for myself, it'd be harder. I'm able to do it easier for somebody else. Like I'm able to say, you know what you are? You are X, Y, and Z. I can do that with my son real good. I can use the words. With myself, it's a little trickier. Like mine would actually, unfortunately, come back to a lot of the things I do. And when I've tried to take inventory, and it's like it's a little. Other people sometimes can do it better for us. Like, I feel that I'm extremely empathetic. I don't have the language of empathy. I'm not an empathy language person. My
Right.
son would like, I want to check on you. That doesn't come out of my mouth. I'm not like I want to check on you. Hey, how you doing? Like I'm thinking it, but I'm not saying it. And so
Right.
for me, like finding the words to even describe myself for your activity there, it's like, yeah, I really should do that because it's weird that I can do it for other people and not as well for myself. Just
Right.
and I wish that my list was, I like to say, I thought of the math one. Notice it's things I do, right? Math and I rap.
Right.
But those are so dominant in my life that it's harder to say when I'm quiet and I'm alone. Like, what am I? Like, my biggest one that I can do that I can come up with, it's almost the empathy. It's that I am like fair. Like I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like I would lie to save somebody ridicule and embarrassment, and it's like, and even then I'm going to be tormented over it because my initial thing is I just want to tell you the truth all the time, Hey, how did I do with that rap? Well, you got some work to do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I know that's going to hurt. So I'll buffer it a little bit first. I'll do like
Right.
the two positives and then the negative and then maybe a positive on the back end to kind of couch it in there the right way. But um, there's a lot going on there. A lot of episodes. That's all I'm saying. A lot of episodes.
Well, the last thing I'll say is, yeah, so back to what I was saying earlier, where I was like, we're all the expression of God, the introvert, extrovert, male, female, yin yang. That's like my whole lens.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see that, yeah, it, like for me, like, okay, here's the way I describe the image. It's like a tree or like a flower. There has to be like the trunk or the stem, which is stable and rooted, but then there has to be flexibility. Like architecture, they teach you got to have wiggle room in even the tallest towers. Like it can't be all rigid.
Right.
So, but I think there has to be a core, a truth, because without the core, like you can't stand. You literally are nothing.
You're an amoeba.
So yeah, so you have to have a core in order to have some change. But you could also make the argument that the true encompassing identity that we all have is that we are simultaneously rigidity and flexibility, or stability, like stability and flexibility. The way I say it, you have to be one part able and flex able, right? Able to flex, able to be stable. So you could make the argument, like to your point about being, in the center, but then being able to wiggle. I think, especially in America, we've been taught the rigidity more than anything. Test data. What is the predictability? What are you going to do? Who are you going to be? But then when it's like, well, now be open. It's like, what do you mean be open?
Do that?
What do you mean? What do you mean? Pandemic? Is no, I don't know how to change. I don't know how to adapt to anything.
Right.
So that's where this freestyle hip hop creativity comes in. It's like, yo, we know how to adapt. Like we know how to respond to the word that's coming that we don't know is coming. We're predicting it. Prediction. That's what before the diction, right? So I think I try to keep that in mind, that I'm more one thing than it. This is the way I put it. I say most people are mostly this. Most people are mostly one thing most of the time. Most people are mostly one thing most of the time. Like I said, about me being an introvert, I'm going to be mostly at home. I'm going to be mostly energized at home most of the time. Yes. Do I go out? Yes. Do I have extroverted tendencies? Yes. But I am that representation in the earth. Extroverted people are going to be mostly extroverted most of the time. And that's great because they need to balance me and I need to balance them. If they weren't represented in the earth, it would be all me and vice versa. Like we both need to be represented.
Weird world.
And they are like, as much as we want them to like change, they're not going to change to be introverts. They're just not. The same way we're not going to change to be extroverts. So I think that goes to that trunk that I'm talking about. It's okay to acknowledge that you are mostly one thing most of the time because that's true of you. But if you disregard that other piece of, I should be more flexible, or you know what, I do need some more stability, you're denying a true part of you too as well. And that's why it's important for both people to spend time with one another, because it's like, hey, you're not going to do the extroverted stuff for yourself. It just takes an extrovert to do it for you, to activate it. Yeah. And they're not going to be introverted. It requires a pandemic.
In those situations.
It requires
relationship. Pandemic
requires a pandemic to make them introverted.
Can we have a pandemic now?
So it's all about that balance.
I would sum it up. I'll leave my last thought here would be this, just to bring it back to the wallflower. So the wallflower analogy makes me think of somebody who's sticking on the wall, growing on the wall, if you will. And yet I think about explorers, right? And I think my tendency is to guess that an explorer would be an extrovert, right? They want to go out and discover all that there is. And I'm thinking like, whoa, if we didn't have explorers, we'd be in tough shape, right? First of all, we'd probably all be on one continent, right? They'd be a little crowded. We wouldn't go to space. We wouldn't do a lot of stuff. We wouldn't know what's in the ocean, blah, blah, blah. And then I think about myself doing this inventory thing. I love to explore. I went with my son this morning. We're like, let's go explore the hotel. Like I got him up. Like he was so excited to go do that, right? Like all kids want to go explore, right? But I've never stopped wanting to explore. And so I think about, are explorers introverts or extroverts? I don't know. But then I think about the wallflower. And I'm like, see, you would think I'm not an adventurous explorer, but I am. I love to explore. When I go into a new city, I got to check it out. I got to know but it's partly I got to know the lay of the land for my own security, right? I got to know, I want to know where the drink machine is, where's the store, where's the pool, where's the gym, I got to know all that stuff. It makes me feel safe and comfortable, but we say that's a sense of adventure. Is it? Because I'm really tapping into my sense of security. You know what I'm saying? So it's an interesting dichotomy there about what's happening each time, to your point about both of them being in you, or both of them being in like God in the universe, right? It's like you have an introvert and extrovert side, and it's a yin and yang situation a lot of times. I do this all the time. I find myself saying this. I'll wrap it up. I say, 51-49. I think about like there's oppression and there's free will. Right. And if you think about like the world coming into existence, right? Like sound creating the universe. Like in the beginning there was, right? There was sound, right? You could say sound created the universe, right? If there was like exist, right? Like if there was a sound wave that did it. It's the 51-49 balance of something over nothing, right? It's the something over nothing. And I also do this with my introvert and extrovert. I do this with most things. I do score everything. I'll go, yeah, it's probably 50-50. Like yin and yang is not exactly yin and yang. There's a 51-49 going on. In the case of existence, it was 51 of free will, freestyle, was more important than the suppress. You suppress people too long, what happens? They rise up, right? Always, right? At some point. It might take a long time, but someone's going to rise up. Life finds a way in the universe, right? Introverts find a way. Right? I just think it's 51-49 in terms of, I don't dislike my extroverts. They can irritate me, right? I just think 51-49 if the introverts are winning the fight. I'm slanting with the introverts with the I got a little bias, I know, but it's 51-49, baby. It's not a lot. You know what I'm saying? Just I might only be 30% on my tests, but all I need is 51-49 at the end of the day, and it's a win for the home team. That's how I'm leaving it. Wallflowers are explorers too, by the way.
All right. Well, this was great.
Yeah, man. I wrote down like 6-7 things here on my little pad of things we got to. That's an episode. That's an episode. All right. Signing off and going to see my squishy son.
All right.
Enjoy your rest of your Sunday. And hey, it's a Monday for me tomorrow too.